Good evening, members of the public, to the April 9th monthly business meeting of the Open Space Board of Trustees. Tonight, we have a slightly different agenda, and so I just want to give folks a heads up that if you're planning to speak during our normal public comment, it'll be slightly later than usual. We have some business that we have to take care of as a board. Um, and and this is because will be recognizing Harmon's second term on the board, and we have to do some officer elections as well. But we will get to that as soon as we can. Half an hour. Yeah, it's right now estimated at 6:30, so it's a little bit later than it usually is. Okay, so let me call the roll first. And do we have, yes, I can't see him, but he's there. Okay, I'm going to call the roll, starting with Trustee Carroll.
Present.
Okay, great. And Glenn,
Present.
Robinson,
Here.
and Zuckerman.
I'm here.
And I am here as well. So we have a full house tonight. Yay. Okay, I'm going to move on to the welcome of Harmon for his second term, which is now a 5-year term. So for the members of the public, Harmon initially served the remainder of a previous trustee's term because there was turnover, and so he just re-upped for a second 5-year term. And I think we have, I don't know, congratulations and condolences to Harmon, whichever it is you decide that is. And you don't have to decide tonight, actually. Some nights it might feel different. Do we have a swearing in? Okay, and you have the document. Do you want to go ahead and take it from there?
Sure. Okay. So I, Harmon Zuckerman, do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States of America and of the State of Colorado and the Charter and ordinances of the City of Boulder, and faithfully perform the duties of the office of a member of the Open Space Board of Trustees, which I am about to enter. And then I will sign, subscribe, and swear this document and give that back to you, Leah.
All right, checked off the list. Great. Thank you, Harmon, for agreeing to do this. Another round. Okay,
Well, I would just say that it was nice getting to know you all over the last year and a half while I was finishing out that term, and it's only because of how much I've enjoyed serving with you and serving with staff that I decided to re-up, because it's a great staff, a great department, and a great board.
Thank you. We are really appreciative that you like us, and we definitely like you. You got a little trial period. Not all of us get to do that, because I don't know if I would have made the same choice. Just kidding. Just kidding. Okay, so as I mentioned earlier, once a year we have to elect officers. There is a longstanding tradition throughout all the boards and commissions throughout the city that the person in typically their 5th year of their appointment, because they're 5-year sentences, I mean appointments, that they serve as chair. But because we had some turnover on our board, we went with the most experienced person, which was me. And I served the last year as chair. I was honored to do that. So got a little mixed up from tradition. Again, it's not like a hard and fast rule, but more of a tradition. We still elect board officers based on who wants to do it, and also who we support. So I think the process that we're going to go through right now is to nominate our 3 positions, which are chair, vice chair, and secretary. Secretary is a staffed role, and that would be you, Leah, right? Okay, anyway, generally. So those are the 3 positions that we need to elect tonight. And I guess I would like to open with, I've enjoyed serving as your chair, but I'm super happy to hand off the baton to the next person who is willing to do that. And if you all are okay, I would like to nominate Harmon Zuckerman for the officer position of chair. Do we have any other, we don't need a second, but do we have any other nominations?
I nominate John Carroll for vice chair.
Okay, right. Any other nominations for chair or vice chair? Okay, and then,
Yeah, I would nominate Leah Russell for secretary.
okay. So I'll make a motion to nominate Harmon as chair, John as vice chair, and you, Leah, as the secretary. And then, yeah, go ahead on second.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Brady. I wanted just the public to know the reason why I support Harmon as being chair, not only because he's willing, but he's also super capable. Even though he's new to this board, he's been a very productive member. And he has served on a previous city board for 5 years, right? And it was the planning board, and including the position as chair. And in the last year, he has served as vice chair with me. So we've been a team, and I know that he's going to be amazing at it. So that's my plug, campaigning for Harmon as chair. And if that is our slate, it's been uh, seconded. I would like to call the roll in support of that particular motion. And I'll start with you. Oh, I'll start with you, John, since I'm looking at you on the screen.
Yes.
Okay. And then I'll go to Sarah
Yes.
and Brady,
Yes.
Harmon.
Yes.
Okay. And then I also vote yes. So that slate passes unanimously. And what that means is that I am going to hand the meeting over to Harmon. All right. And you know what? I eliminated the gavel last year.
Yeah, I
You're
was
welcome
really
to have it, but I am
expecting
going to give you a lot.
you would hand me
of-
something.
I eliminated it. No, it's there. Leah's got it if you want. I will tease you
I'll
about it.
trade
if
you my
decide.
signature and my oath for that gavel later on. But I think I might be able to handle this meeting with no gavel. So
I know you want that gavel, Harmon.
you what?
I said, I know you want that
I
gavel.
want that gavel. Okay. Yeah, no, and it's an honor, and thank you very much. And I just realized you were able to preside so beautifully over all those meetings with no gavel. So congratulations. And also, John, I assume by your vote you accept the position of vice chair. So I look forward to working with you on that.
Yes. Looking forward to it. Thanks, everyone.
Okay. Well, without further ado, we'd like to thank you, Michelle, for all of the things that you've done as the chairman of this board. So I'm going to read a proclamation in recognition of you as the chair of the Board of Trustees. Open Space and Mountain Park staff, I'm speaking for them as well as us, along with the Open Space Board of Trustees, would like to recognize Michelle Estrella for her time over the last year as the chair of the Open Space Board of Trustees. Michelle has shown immense dedication in her service to this community, her relationships with her OSBT peers, and with OSMP staff. She's an advocate for safe and accessible recreation, promoting equitable and fair access to public lands, and giving voice and opportunity to all current and prospective users of the open space and mountain park system. Michelle has helped shape constructive, meaningful board retreats that will impact the work trustees do for years to come. Michelle provided feedback on the budget process that will have a lasting impact on the department. Based on feedback from Michelle, staff have incorporated a list of potential 6-year projects into conversations with the board, which gives the public a transparent, clear picture of the staff work plan. Over the last year, Michelle has been instrumental in leading conversations for many important topics, including wildfire resiliency, Fort Chambers Poor Farm site planning, the North Foothills Bikeway, the Boulder to Erie Regional Trail, or BERT, climbing access trails, climate action, equity, and enhanced bike infrastructure needs at trailheads and access points. Finally, Michelle has been a champion of asserting the structure of board meetings and helping to ensure that the meetings are efficient, productive, and concluded at a reasonable time in an effort to support working parents. And I would add, and the public, to the extent that they participate in our meetings. The leadership exhibited by Michelle over the last year has been vital to the success of this board and the Open Space and Mountain Parks Department. Staff and the board look forward to continuing to work alongside Michelle for her remaining year as a member of the Open Space Board of Trustees. And we sincerely thank you, Michelle, for all the effort that you've put in and how diligently you've discharged your duties as chair during this year.
Thank you. That was a lot. I didn't realize you were going to come up with that, but save it because you're going to have to read it again next year, right when I leave.
Well, I think there's a nicer version of this
Okay.
on better paper that you're going to end up with as a recollection.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, so the next order of business, and I just want to point out we're already running 10 minutes ahead of schedule. Yeah. Oh, everybody has time to say something nice since we're running 10 minutes ahead of schedule. Go ahead.
Well, one, I just wanted to note the only glaring omission from that, other than a few nice things I want to say, is no mention of bike racks. But
Well, there was the trailhead infrastructure.
okay,
for
okay,
bicycles.
yeah,
That's just
tangential.
OSMP speak
Okay,
for bike
yeah.
racks.
And this is the second board I've served on with Michelle. And Michelle, you work hard. You're somebody who keeps everything moving on schedule. And you reached out to me personally before every meeting. Even when I could hear it in your voice and by the din in the background that there were other things going on in your life. I think you've taken this role and your service to the community very seriously. And I think we're really lucky to have had you here, and I'm glad we're not saying goodbye to you yet. So thank you. It's been a pleasure.
John, would you like to go or would you like for me to go?
Sure, I'll jump in here.
Okay,
Thanks,
bring in-
Michelle, for your service as the chair of the OSBT. I'm still probably going to call you out of habit, before every meeting to catch up, or I'm going to miss it. It's been great working with you over the last few years, especially, as I joined the board as a sweet summer child. You really helped me come up to speed on issues and how to be a great member on the board. So really appreciate it.
All right. Well, I second everything that I've heard here, and I joined this board with you per your suggestion that I apply, which I was so surprised when I actually was received and got to be here. You have been more than generous with your time, and you're a very strong woman, and I really appreciate that about you, and it is truly an honor to serve with you here. And I can never see a bike rack without thinking about you.
I want one dedicated.
Okay. I think I'll move on to approval of minutes. So from the sacred to the mundane. And following Michelle's tradition, I will ask if anyone has any comments on the first page of the minutes. Okay, seeing none. Are there any comments, corrections, and concerns on the second page of the minutes? Okay, seeing none, I'll call for a motion to approve the March 12th, 2025 minutes.
So moved.
Is there a second?
I second.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor by Estrella, seconded by Glenn to approve the March 12th, 2025 minutes. Call for a roll call vote. Start with Carol.
Yes.
Glenn.
Yes.
Robinson.
Abstain, I wasn't there.
Estrella.
Yes.
And I vote yes, so 4-0 to approve with one abstention. Okay. And at this point, I'd like to, at 6:16, so 14 minutes ahead of schedule, This is going to be, I'm going to compete with Michelle for the rest of this year, for who can move quicker. So, or who had moved quicker. So anyway, this is the public comment for items not identified in the public hearing. We have no public hearings in tonight's meeting, so any member of the public wishing to address the OSBT tonight, now is your time. Each member of the public can get 3 minutes to speak to us. Do we have members signed up already?
We do, and Lauren's going to start with just the rules of decorum.
Yeah, sounds good.
Bear with me. Thank you. This is my first time covering for this, so we're gonna get through it. So to read through the rules of decorum. Can you see it? You could also do that. The city has engaged with community members to co-create a vision for productive, meaningful, and inclusive civic conversations. This vision supports physical and emotional safety for community members, staff, and board and commission members, as well as democracy for people of all ages, identities, lived experiences, and political perspectives. For more information about this vision and the community engagement process, please visit the link provided here. The following are examples of rules of decorum found in the Boulder Revised Code and other guidelines that support this vision. These will be upheld during this meeting. All remarks and testimony shall be limited to matters related to city business. No participant shall make threats or use other forms of intimidation against any person. Obscenity, racial epithets, and other speech and behavior that disrupts or otherwise impedes the ability to conduct the meeting are prohibited. Participants are required to sign up to speak using the name they are commonly known by, and individuals must display their whole name before being allowed to speak online. Currently, only audio testimony is permitted online. If you are joining in person and would like to speak during public comment or items identified for public hearing, please sign up at the table and we will call you up to speak at the podium. So we will start tonight with folks who have signed up online in advance. So we'll be starting with Josh Albin, followed by Jan Burton, and then we'll proceed to folks who have just signed up using the sign-up sheet. The first is Jacqueline McKenna.
Well, it looks like Josh is here in person.
Okay, Josh is here in person.
Yeah, and I'm going to go. Josh, give me 1 second. I'm going to turn that.
Sure. Lauren, how many people do we have signed up for public comment at this point?
It looks like we have 8, including 1 online.
Okay, thank you.
Good to go. Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me. My name is Josh Alvin. I'm here with the Flagstaff Fire Action Prevention Group, a group of concerned citizens in the Chautauqua area and beyond. I lived in Chautauqua for a while, and I'm here to ask this body to act. We are gravely concerned about the public safety and fire hazards that happen at least every week on the mountain, and we think this body has a role to play in it. My wife and I have a new nightly routine. Several times a month, we hear fireworks go off, and then we draw straws to see who's going to call the sheriff. My daughters are 6 and 8, and I would be very surprised if my house is still standing by the time they go to college. That's how much fire activity there's happening up on Flagstaff. And I think we're making it too complicated. We've seen a bunch of half measures, studies. With all due respect, signage is not going to stop people from doing nefarious activities at 3 in the morning. So my ask is simple, and this is also seen in a letter coming from Lauren Lambert and the broader group, the prevention group. We need to deny safe harbor to people on the road and in parking lots after hours on Flagstaff. Block the parking lots. And that also means the carve out and pull out areas. It's pretty simple. It's low tech. This community and this neighborhood will fund it, no problem. 2, we need to have 360-degree camera trailers or permanent installations positioned in identified high incident areas. We need more proactive enforcement to increase physical patrols. And we would like to consider making Flagstaff Road a 24-hour license plate reader equipped entry point to Flagstaff Road, or making it just a resident-only access area after hours from 9 p.m. to 4 in the morning. To conclude, we've been studying this for long enough. I grew up in Denver in the 90s, and we would come up to Flagstaff Road to smoke cigarettes and make out. What's happening up there is very different. We're talking about rapes, we're talking about murders, we're talking about shots fired at rangers. Enough is enough. It needs to be shut down. A couple other things. I read in the newsletter that this committee is going to be pulling together a full list of actions and ideas towards the end of 2025, and they will consider acting on that. Not good enough, not by a long shot. We need action right now. We're heading into fire season. This committee needs to take that seriously. I do not think this committee wants to be the one putting together a list, another list before a major fire heading into fire season. That would be an abdication of your responsibility. This is a public safety monstrosity. You guys need to get your hands on it. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Josh.
Okay, up next we have Jan Burton, and Jan is online. Jan, I've unmuted you on my end if you're able to speak.
Okay, thank you.
Great.
Good evening, everyone, both staff and OSBT. My name is Jan Burton. I live in Boulder on the Hill. First of all, I would like to update you. I think I told you a few months ago I was starting the Boulder Trails Challenge, which is hiking all the trails in 1 year, and I'm 38% complete, and what an incredible experience. So many new trails I've been on, east, north, south. It's fantastic, and I would really encourage more people to do that. Secondly, I'm a raptor monitor assigned to a peregrine site, and I see you're going to talk about volunteer things tonight. I just want you to know, from my perspective, I don't need parties. I don't need gifts. I don't need huge amounts of acknowledgement. The journey for me is the reward. I really want continued education from the biologists about why we're being successful, why we're not. It's a great program, and I just think you guys do a great job with it. Thirdly, I'd like to talk about Flagstaff and that the issues that were already addressed by the previous speaker. As a community member, I've only recently learned about this, but I don't live too far from Flagstaff, and I have become very concerned about my own fire mitigation and am taking actions that will cost me a lot. So the number one thing is, as a community member, I'm disturbed about danger to rangers. It would break my heart if something happened to a ranger, and we should all think about that seriously. Number two, I'm very nervous about the urgent nature of a fire risk. As I've told you, I'm pulling out all my junipers. I'm getting rid of my favorite blue spruce. I'm going to do everything I can to be a good community member. But to have those kind of activities going on up at Flagstaff is unnecessary, it's uncalled for. And I would echo the voice of the previous speaker that this board needs to be very proactive in your approach with both staff and council. Demand action from the sheriff, either patrolling, and if he won't commit to resources for patrolling, then an action like closing it down might be the best choice. And I think that the OSBT staff needs to, and you need to demand that council tracks the progress on this. I would also encourage new fireworks legislation. I don't think it's tough enough. There should be a special place in hell for people who are setting off fireworks on our open space. So thank you so much for all of your efforts, and I look forward to seeing the progress on this. Thank you.
Jan, thanks for those comments, and thanks for your volunteer efforts too.
Up next, we have Jacqueline McKenna, followed by Alicia Curtin, Giles Troughton, and Lauren Lambert-Feldman.
Okay, my name is Jacqueline McKenna, resident of the city of Boulder for 28 years. I'm extremely concerned about the wildfire risk at Panorama Point. I also know it as Viewpoint on Flagstaff Mountain due to the near constant reckless behavior of car racing and setting off fireworks. OSMP, Boulder County, and the city of Boulder have the responsibility for managing this area, and I'm here tonight to implore you to escalate this issue to the city council and the city manager and have them request that the sheriff implement a plan to reduce the risk of human-caused wildfires. My concern has been elevated by personal experience. This summer, I witnessed and called 911 on a Panorama Point fire started by drunken partiers setting off firecrackers. We were extremely lucky, and there was no wind, and fire trucks arrived within 5 minutes. One was on its way back from the reservoir fire to extinguish the fire before it spread. Under different circumstances, with the extremely dry conditions of this summer, that fire could have spread down from Panorama Point, burned the homes in our neighborhood, and then gone on to burn the city of Boulder. In the fall of 2024, I graduated from the Fire Adapted Colorado Neighborhood Ambassador course, so I have been educated on the risk of wildfire in Boulder, particularly in the WUI, the Wildland Urban Interface, where I live in Boulder City just below Panorama Point. Since witnessing the first fire, we have had 2 more fires near Panorama Point, one that I witnessed and spent a good part of the evening calling neighbors to warn them as it started late at night after many had gone to bed, and another that happened a few days ago, a car fire. Unless OSMP and the city and the county implement effective measures to address this wildfire risk, we will eventually have a catastrophic fire that will destroy not only our neighborhood, but could potentially torch the whole Boulder community. Wildfire risk is already high. Funding for firefighters has been drastically reduced, so our community is very worried, especially when almost nightly we hear cars racing, crash or accident could set off a fire, firecrackers being detonated, and drunken partying just above us. My recommendation, backed by many, is that OSMP and the county escalate this issue to the city council and the city manager and have them request that the sheriff implement a plan like the following one to reduce the risk of human-caused fires. Put in a gate with license plate photography at the base of Flagstaff so traffic must stop and be photographed. Make sure that Panorama Point, there are cameras installed and maintained and the footage reviewed often to note violations. Clearly post at the gate and again at Panorama Point that there is 24-hour surveillance of the area and prosecution will be enforced for any violations. Patrol the area with police cars to discourage this reckless behavior. And finally, follow up immediately on any infractions, prosecute and impose hefty fines and publicize that so it is known that partying with firecrackers and car racing is not tolerated. Thank you for your attention to this matter. I look forward to your following up and better protecting the Boulder community from human-caused wildfires.
Thank you, Jacqueline.
You timed that perfectly.
Up next is Alicia Curtin.
Good evening. My name is Alicia Curtin. I live on Grant Place on the University Hill. I am a single mother with 4 children and living in a single home, a family home. And I too completed the Fire Adapted Colorado Wildfire Ambassador course. I sit on the executive committee for the University Hill Neighborhood Association, and I am also part of the Flagstaff Fire Action Prevention Committee. I have sat in meetings with the staff and in which Chief Lowry told me that should there be a wildfire that comes over Flagstaff Mountain, it will quickly turn into an urban fire. And at that point, they will install life-saving measures. As a single mother with 4 children, I can pile into my minivan and then sit in traffic like we witnessed in the Palisades fire. The whole point is that Chief Lowry actually told me to get on my bicycle to get away from a fire. But when we have the opportunity to take measures to deter from the very beginning human-caused fire by installing some simple measures that seem not too extravagant, I think that would be prudent. I think that would be wise, and I think that would be a benefit to the greater Boulder community. So as part of the Flagstaff Fire Action Prevention Committee, we drafted a memo which you received today, and there are 4 suggestions that we are asking you to address sooner rather than later. This greatly affects the quality of life for all of the residents in the Willowbrook neighborhood, in the University Hill neighborhood. Our sleep is disturbed. My children have PTSD from the Marshall fire. They have bags packed. This affects our mental health, and these are not Boulder residents. There are closing that road, closing access is seemingly low hanging fruit and very achievable. I am urging you to work with the sheriff's department, with the police department, with who I know there are 4 different agencies that monitor that Flagstaff corridor. And we're urging for communication so that so that Boulder residents can benefit from your collaboration, and that this is addressed now and not at the end of 25 after we've gone through another fire season. Thank you.
Thanks, Alicia.
Next, we have Giles Troutman.
Good evening, trustees. Giles Troughton from Boulder. Remember my scintillating comments from last month when I referenced the story of Alice in Wonderland? Well, I've got another story for you this month, 2 actually, both about emperors, and neither one, at least intentionally, is about our current president. The Emperor Has No Clothes and the Emperor Nero in Rome. First, I want to start by apologizing for any miscommunication from last month. Just to clarify, I'm not in favor of closing OSMP for months at a time, in case you got that impression, nor do I think my comments were coming from a place of fear or emotion or based only on perception and not based on reality. With a wildfire risk greater than 97% of the rest of the United States, I would submit that my thoughts, comments, and recommendations are based in reality, based on prudent risk management practices, preparation, and problem solving, not based on paranoia. These human-caused ignitions continue. Just look at the car fire that occurred on Panorama Point last Friday during no parking hours. 9:41 is when the fire department was called. I don't know why this area isn't chained off as prior speakers have recommended. City boards and staff have a responsibility to inform, educate, present options, make recommendations to council and the city manager. Information should be fact-based, science-based, best available information. At a recent IWUI code meeting, the fire marshal in Boulder said 70% of the structures in town need to be made ignition resistant for them to have half a chance of protecting the city. Well, if that's the target, is that target embedded within the CWPP? I haven't seen it in there. And if so, why is it that council members are unaware of that target? The staff replied to me when I posed that question, well, that's not the direction we received from council in their December meeting. I think this is a case of garbage in and garbage out. And you folks and the city staff needs to tell council what they need to hear, not what you think they want to hear. There's a big difference. We need to have a data-driven, results-oriented framework for our approach to problem solving. Simple questions. What's the current state? What's the target goal? What's the action plan? What are the measures of success? What's the transparency and accountability shouldn't be too much to expect. What we often get when difficult questions are posed is city staff, in my opinion, seems to respond with a list of the activities, see how busy we are, rather than see how effective we are. And I observed this in the Q&A component at the last March meeting of this board. So, Emperor Nero, fiddling while Rome burns. We're 3 years removed from Marshall. How long should it take to protect our community against this threat? Based on the current trajectory of home hardening, we're not going to reach the 70% target for decades. Apparently, city leadership, city council, city manager, the fire chief, the fire marshal are all okay with that timeline. Are you? Please state that for the record if you are. And please tell the emperor he's not wearing clothes. And please don't let our city leadership continue to fiddle away while Boulder burns. Thank you. Oh, this weekend dinner, 7 o'clock, cocktails at 6, my house.
Thanks, Giles.
Next, we have Lauren Lambert Feldman, followed by Lynn Siegel online. And if there's anybody else online who would like to speak, if you could use the raise hand function. And if there are any others in person, if you could come up here and we can take your name.
Ready? All right. Sorry, a little funky with my laptop. Good evening. My name is Lauren Lambert Feldman. I'm here today on behalf of the Flagstaff Fire Action Prevention Committee. As we've sent you a memo that you have probably, hopefully seen at this point, we are increasingly concerned by the number of human-caused wildfires we're seeing in the Flagstaff area. And since 2024, we know of at least 7 human-caused, truly preventable fires that we've had. And as you know, a staggering 87% of all wildfires are attributed to human activity, highlighting the pressing need for proactive measures to reduce their frequency. With Boulder classified as one of Colorado's highest wind communities, the risk of embers traveling a mile or more ahead of the fire perimeter is all too real. What happens along Flagstaff Road poses a direct threat to our entire city. And it's truly not a question of if, but when we're going to have a significant wildfire impact our community. We are frustrated that the Flagstaff Corridor management memo that you will be discussing this evening lists several management and operational improvements that you should consider, but also states that staff will come back with formal recommendations, quote, later in 2025. We urge you to implement some of your own suggestions immediately, such as installing physical barriers that prohibit parking along access areas like Panorama Point during illegal parking hours. The city truly has a public safety responsibility that must be met with urgency. As we have witnessed from recent wildfires across the nation, when high-risk weather conditions converge with human negligence, the consequences can be catastrophic, and it overwhelms our fire response capabilities. Despite the commendable efforts of OSMP staff, many of whom we've had the pleasure of meeting with, illegal activities persist along Flagstaff Road, and you yourselves have said that more staffing will not solve this problem. We have already experienced 2 wildfires in 2025, and the peak of the wildfire season is approaching rapidly. With shared resources, we enter into certain social contracts as human beings. When we go to a big sporting event, we can only bring small, clear bags with us. When we go to the airport, there are all sorts of restrictions on what we can bring with us. So why shouldn't the protection of our precious public lands against reckless human activity come with the same minor individual sacrifices in public access for the greater good? We are truly just one careless act away from a potential wildfire disaster akin to the Marshall Fire. Please act now. Our community is depending on your leadership. Thank you.
Thanks, Lauren.
Next is Lynn Siegel. And Lynn, I have unmuted you if you're able to speak.
Couldn't agree more. Could not agree more. But you know, there's another fire, and guess what? It's happening in Gaza. And it's going to be soon happening by the new fighter, F-48, whatever President Trump is. That's the name of the plane. Fighter jet. It's going to be bombing in Gaza. It's going to be bombing in the West Bank. It's going to be bombing in East Jerusalem. This is your problem. It's a local problem, local. Just like the fire's potential from these college students here. Now, what I'm going to talk about tonight is another kind of open space, mountain parks, and Board of Trustees issue. And that is space for people to live in Boulder. Density of this place and the effect that it has on our funding of our open space for maintenance and operations. And that is one of the houses that was reviewed on, I follow 5 boards here, TAB and OSBT and RAB and Planning Board and Landmarks. Landmarks today, 655 Marine Street, got an addition that dwarfs the house. It's an addition actually to the side. And I can't tell you all the reasons that it was not done right, that the massing issue of the addition is really inappropriate and doesn't follow the guidelines of the Landmarks Board. But what's really important, when I went by there on my bike on the way to the Conference on World Affairs, was that the yard as a result of this thing is going to be nothing. And you know, what you have to think about as a board in this densification is the demand that people are coming for. They're going to come from the Sundance Film Festival being here. They're coming from all over, and they want a little piece of Boulder. But you know, they come here for the open space, but they're inhabiting the open space. And by filling it up with all of this density, you are creating a greater demand because people have a range just like elephants do. They need a certain range to go out and enjoy the beautiful open spaces that this board aspires to protect. And it's not happening without you being concerned about the other boards and how the developers in this town are costing you. Done.
Thanks for that, Lynn.
Okay, that was our last member of the public signed up for public comment. There are no additional raised hands online.
Is there anybody in the audience right now who would like to speak before I close the open public comment? Okay, then the open public comment period is closed. And we're going to go on to matters from the board. There's no written information in your packet that doesn't also have matters from the department presentation associated with it. So unless you have a burning question around one of the matters from the department, I would recommend that we just hold our questions and comments on those until the actual presentation. But if you all have anything you want to say around anything, I don't want to stifle discussion. And this is also a time for folks to respond to items that came up during public comment or bring up other items that are germane to the board. Michelle?
Yeah, I just have a question about that because, well, actually, I'll take it offline. I'll take that question offline with you. I just would like to point out the fact that we do have an open space board field trip on May 9th that is focused on wildfire mitigation, and we'll be walking at Shanahan Ridge, and we'll, I'm sure, get a lot more opportunity to talk about wildfire. That's it.
I really appreciate the community activism, and I wanted to know more about the Saturday evening invitation. So if I could get those details, that would be great. And I will hold other comments, as you know that I'm very strongly interested in this topic, but I'll hold them until the presentation.
Nothing from you, Brady? John? Okay. I just wanted to say before we move on, thank you for all the members of the public who've come forward and spoken passionately about your concerns about Flagstaff Road. And I also want to say that we're definitely listening, and we may have a little bit less in the way of actual power than you are ascribing to us as a board. We're an advisory board. We cannot direct staff. And I heard one member of the public ask us to close the road. My belief is that it's a county highway, and this board doesn't have the power to do that. So I'm more inclined to take seriously suggestions like the ones where you're asking us to talk with City Council, let City Council know what our priorities are. That's what we're really here to do as an advisory board. We're here to work with staff and communicate things up to council, and we're very happy to do that. Well then, Dan, I'd like to turn it over to you for the next matter on the agenda.
Right. Thank you, Harmon. Yeah, we have 4 items under matters from the department. We're going to start with some recognition and appreciation of our tremendous volunteer corps that every year they're out there in force. We heard Jan Burton comment on her volunteerism as a raptor monitor, and that's just one example of our program. And it is later in April. It's Volunteer Appreciation Week. And so typically during this month at the board meeting, we like to pay a special tribute and recognition to our volunteers. And as a request from the OSBT, we're going to pair that with a brief presentation on our volunteer program. And I believe I am going to turn things over to Debbie Cushman to lead us through this presentation as well as the declaration.
Good evening, Debbie.
Good evening, board. Can you hear me? Okay, great. I don't have too much trouble usually with my voice carrying. Um, Again, Debbie Cushman, I'm a volunteerism and service learning program manager here at Open Space, and I'm super excited to share more about the volunteer program with you. As you know, as you are all volunteers, and you as well, John, thank you. We have a really robust volunteer program at Open Space. I'm really just have about 6 or 7 slides I'm going to run through, and then we'll have time for questions, conversation. I have a couple of our volunteers with us tonight as well, and you are welcome to check in with them, ask any questions of them as well. I do not manage the volunteers alone since our program is so large. I work with the ongoing volunteer, so groups that give long-term commitments like the Raptor program, like our bike patrol, whose folks we have here tonight. Chris Weinberger is one of my colleagues. She works with service learning, youth service learning, ready to work, and one-day projects. Also, Bo Clark in our trails department and a couple of his staff work on trails and trail building events. And then Dave Barry, who works with our court-ordered community service groups and scouts. And then lots of other staff at Open Space who are all involved working with volunteers. I have the city cooperative logo on that slide as well. We have a cooperative with the whole city, so all of our department volunteer leaders get together almost on a monthly basis, and we have subcommittees and we work on joint trainings, recognition, share ideas, trends in volunteerism, and really work closely together for the city. Next slide. So here are our volunteer participation numbers for 2024. As you can see, there were over 1,600 volunteers who showed up and worked on the land this year. We're kind of bouncing back from COVID pandemic times and feeling good about where we're at. Our numbers dropped a little bit from 2023, but we actually went up in hours. So we had over 20,000 hours of volunteer effort, which is really, I think, pretty enormous on the land. Next slide.
Speak a little closer to the mic because
Yes.
online folks are saying, great.
Yeah, no problem. Oh, yeah. That made a difference. As you can see from the pie chart, this is just a breakdown of the hours of those 20,000 hours of volunteer work. So that big slice of pie, the big green slice on the left, is going to be all our one-day programs, trail projects, community service work. And that was over 7,000 hours of time. And then all the rest of the pie are the programs that I manage, ongoing programs. So you can see yourselves up there right next to the green big slice of pie in blue is the Board of Trustees. And then some of our bigger programs, you can see trail ambassadors, raptor monitors, our education naturalists, and our bike patrol, and our Chautauqua ambassador program. I'll give you a minute to look at those. And Leah, when you're ready, the next slide. Well, volunteer impact comes in lots of ways and forms, and money is one of them for the department. So we equated that to over $750,000 this year in work done by volunteers at the department. For about every dollar we spend on personnel managing volunteers, as well as the resources that we need to manage volunteers, we get over double that back in volunteer effort. While money is important, I think as a volunteer manager, and I know speaking for the other volunteer managers at Open Space, we really look to other impacts the volunteers make, especially their connection to the community. They are the ones on our land who are participating, develop the care for the land. It becomes very personal for them and really influences Open Space, and really they show so much love for the land and so much energy. Can't thank them enough. I have a couple testimonials just on that subject to share too. Visitors are so impressed that the city has friendly volunteers providing outreach on trails. I've had people on trails thank me for being a volunteer, and that's always nice. This is the most meaningful job I've ever had, welcoming people, helping them and their families to stay safe while expanding their knowledge and love of the natural world and fulfilling their desire for adventure and achievement. And lastly, this experience was one of the best I've ever had since moving to Boulder. I've taken for granted all the hard work that goes into trail building, maintenance, and more. I'll remember this experience for a long time and will be more inclined to find opportunities like this in the future. I get a little emotional when I actually read those. It just makes me so proud and so heartfelt thankful to all the volunteer work that happens on open space. Next slide. So tonight I wanted to recognize some of our Spotlight Awards. So this is something Chris and Bo and Janelle and I started a few years ago, where once or twice a year we will nominate some of our volunteers, whether it be a school group or a corporate group or individuals. We recognize them on our website, social media posts, and I actually invited them to come tonight. So they are here with us. So Mitch Smith on the left has been on Bike Patrol for 17 years, since 2008. He's also served as our volunteer director of the Bike Patrol, and he has more miles than any other patroller. He also has more hours than any other volunteer in the history of open space. You are number one, Mitch, at over 3,500 hours. Thank you. Yes.
So given his average speed, how many miles is that?
Yeah, wait. Chuck Anderson is another volunteer who's with us here tonight. He's in the other picture. He's on the right in his volunteer jersey, that we have new jerseys we'll show off in a minute. And Chuck has been patrolling with us for the last 13 years since he moved to Boulder. He also manages our database of all the hours, since this is a multi-agency group. Instead of just managing it here on my end, we work with the county and Forest Service as well, and Parks and Rec at the city. So Chuck is who has all the hours and keeps track of everything for us, which is awesome. He also started this incredible partnership. So I have a picture with him with Randy Winter from Boulder County Horsemen's Association, and Walker and Ellie, who are our ambassador horses. And we really integrated in the last 2 years, bringing the horses out to bike outreach tables with us at bike trailheads, and just sharing with the community the importance about co-recreating with horses, bikes, hikers, and everyone sharing the trail. And it's been a really awesome partnership. Nice job, Chuck. Thank you. Next slide. And I was going to turn this over to Michelle, but Harmon, I guess since you are our new board chair, if you would like to read our declaration for National Volunteer Week, which is April 20th through 26th, but we will celebrate it all month and honor our volunteers, and I'd love to have you read that.
Sure, I'll do that. This is the declaration for National Volunteer Week. The Open Space Board of Trustees joins the staff of the City of Boulder Open Space and Mountain Parks Department in recognizing all our volunteers during National Volunteer Week 2025. We salute the hundreds of open space and mountain parks volunteers who contributed their talents and efforts in helping the department carry out its city charter purpose for open space. This community of volunteers is an inspiration, as their contributions help to protect the resources and provide for enjoyable experiences, making Boulder's open space and mountain parks a special place. Congratulations.
Thank you. And thanks for your time and commitment as well. And thanks to all our volunteers. Next slide, Liam. Thank you. And really, that was it. I'm ready to just have you all ask us any questions you have. Again, Mitch and Chuck are here if you have any questions for our bike patrol or any other volunteer thoughts. on your mind or discussions would be great.
Michelle?
I'd love to hear from the volunteers, and I just have if you're comfortable coming up and speaking into the microphone. Um, and the question is, why do you do it? And I just would love to hear what you get out of it. While you're taking your turn up here, I just want to convey a story. Don't all rush up there or anything. uh, and so sorry, everybody's going to have to hear the story over and over again. But my experience with, gosh, must have been around like 2010 when I lived near Shanahan Ridge. My experience with the bike patrol was amazing because I brought several of my girlfriends out to ride the Marshall Mesa Trailhead, took them down or up to Springbrook Loop. They're visiting from out of town, and they were slower than I thought they would be, and we ran out of light. Um, and one of your bike patrollers helped us get out. Nobody had light. And so, yeah, one of your patrollers helped us get back safely toward the Shanahan area. And we're just so grateful. He was so friendly and so available. And just, and it's just an experience that I'll always take with me. Like, these are people who are giving their time. And just like the other 2,000 or the 1,668 people in 2024, and that's 20,000 hours. Like, I hope that you really feel appreciated, because I know I mean, we give our time every month, but that's like we read and then we show up here and talk to one another. But you're out there doing the real work and you're not getting paid. And I just want you to know that we are super grateful for you. Thank you. Yeah, I would just like to hear why you do it, if you're okay with that.
Is this mic on? Can you hear me? Okay. So I mean, I do it just because I want to give back to the community. It's a really good thing to do, bike patrol. People love it. I help people out, really. And it's just part of my nature, part of my being, really. So that's the short answer. I can tell you stories, lots of stories about bike patrol and
How
how I
about
help
one?
people out.
How about a good story?
One of my favorite ones is I met a runner on South Boulder Road. He was obviously on the trail, and it was probably around dusk in mid-December. And he didn't know where he was. It was his first time on the trail, and he'd been left by his fellow runner. Had never been on open space before, and had no cell phone and no phone number for this person. And so I stopped my patrol, obviously, when that happened. And I just walked him to the East Boulder Community Center and walked in there and talked to the receptionist there and called the police, obviously, the non-911 line, and helped him out and then left. Later on, I found that he did connect with his partner and everything was fine. So, yeah, it's just what I do. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Anything else, you guys? Yeah. I can go all night long, by the
Well,
way. So
it's Chuck.
Okay. Chuck.
Chuck, do you want to come up and answer Michelle's question, and then we'll see if other board members have questions?
Yeah, sure. I mean, a lot of what Mitch said. I let him go first, so I could just say, yeah, what Mitch said. But also, I think a big motivation for me is from very early age. But I love being out on the trails, but I also think they're a reflection of our community at large. So making sure that everyone feels welcome and is having a good time out there and helping people out there and sort of helping people get along. And that's sort of big reward for me in it, which is why I kind of do a lot of work with the horse folks too. And so like my good story is just from the recent years, we do these events at the trailheads, and before that, we tried working with OSMP, us being the bike patrol, setting up a table, talking to people at the trailheads, and they're successful, but not that many people stop. They just kind of go right by. It's amazing. You have a couple of horses sitting there, and everybody stops for the most part. And those who don't, you're just like, it's pet a horse day. Have you ever pet a horse? And they're like, but just the look of the little kids that have never actually been that close to a horse coming up and just the look in their eyes, feeding the horse a treat. Not that they're my horses, but I get to play with them at the trailhead events. But yeah, it's a ton of fun and it feels good giving back. And just want to close by saying thanks to all of you folks, because you're also volunteering, I think. So yeah, the role you play in keeping open space working well. it's much appreciated from this side too. So. Questions? Other questions?
Other trustees? Okay.
I'll make a comment also, just say thank you. Being of service and the generosity of your time is truly the greatest gift. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Maybe we could put up the slide with the questions for the board again, so
Yeah, that'd be
and
great.
see if we want to
Thanks.
address either of those other ones.
Yeah, there's one more question. One is just a comment, the last one, that even though y'all give so many hours sitting here, as one of you just said, I think Michelle, I do have a handout that I can drop with Leah and Lauren, and I can also email you of some other ideas if you want to come out and just shadow any of the programs we do. Some of the other programs, come with us one night, bat monitoring, raptor monitoring, come on a bike patrol. I will send you out with these guys. That you are welcome to do some of the outdoor more fun. I don't know if I can say that. Things that the volunteers do, but I have a list of opportunities like when National Trails Day is, which I know some of you are always out anyways, helping on those with your families. But we welcome you to join us on one-day projects, trail projects, and anything else you'd like to experience with the volunteer crew.
I'll respond to that and say yes, and thank you
Yes,
for sharing
awesome.
that information.
Good. Yeah.
Especially things I know, do all of us have children in sort of middle school age? So also things that we could engage, sixth grade, engage our young people with, is
Awesome.
especially of interest.
Cool. That's great. Yeah, we are hearing from the whole community that family programs are a want in the community, and that's great. So we're looking more towards that as the whole city volunteer cooperative. Chris Weinberg's Esoterra culinary program, I have a picture of that on the right, and that's our first middle school program we've kind of tackled, doing some service learning with the LGBT community and Esoterra, and they're planting their edible salads out on open space. So we're moving that direction. Thanks, Sarah. All right. Thank you
Okay.
all.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Debbie. Great. Well, we're going to move on to our second item that matters from the board department, and that's an update on our Flagstaff operations and management initiative. And we're going to have Jeff Haley and Bill Wildenberg come and provide us a presentation and engage in some discussion. And just first of all, also would like to thank the community members that came out tonight to urge us, to encourage us to do more. And always welcome that, and welcome other ideas that might come to the table throughout this. I also, just before I turn it over to Jeff, just want to make the comment that I don't know how much this comes off, but I like to view this as a mixture of implementation. We're doing a lot of stuff and wanting to continue to do more effective stuff while continuing to assess what we can do more of. And so it's a mixture of planning, yes, but also implementation. And I hope that comes off in some form or fashion when we update you on fire resiliency or the safety project, is that we're always sort of wanting to do continual improvement. Where are the gaps? What can we do more of while we continue to implement? So it is that balance. And for those who think that maybe we're just more in the planning mode, it's good to get that feedback, but also just want to let you know at a staff level, every day we're out there doing stuff, and it is that mixture of implementation and further refinements and further enhancements that we're looking for. And tonight we want to talk about a project where we want to assess what's going on and what are some possible solutions so we can continue to implement and possibly integrate some new ideas into our management. So with that, I'm going to kick it over to Jeff to begin with, I believe.
Jeff Haley, Deputy Director for our Visitor Experience and Infrastructure. And I just want to echo a little bit of what Dan said. We did receive many emails and certainly the memo from the Flagstaff Fire Prevention Action Committee. And we take that very seriously. In fact, we've been reading it and understanding it all day as some of the information has been coming in. And I do agree. I want to just thank the community for being so proactive and interested. certainly neighbors, but also just protecting the city as a whole and providing thoughtful feedback. We have engaged with some of the neighbors. We certainly look forward to engaging more with FPAC and others through this process. And you'll see many of the ideas and suggestions are included in some of the work that we have done so far that you probably read in the memo and you'll see in the presentation in just a moment. I would remind also this project goes way beyond just the fire risk. When we initiated this project last year, certainly fire is a highlight and a key theme of the project, but also just even as some of the neighbors mentioned, crime, safety issues, resource protection, visitor management, a lot of those goals. So we're looking comprehensively in this project. And as you recall, last month, even at the OSBT board meeting, we had a pretty thoughtful, thorough update from our staff on the wildfire resilience work and a lot of those key themes that will be threaded into this project. So I just want to put some kind of boxes around all the different work that's happening. A lot of the fire work is very specific to some other project teams that we're at staff that we're working closely with, but also weaving into this. And then I think Harmon made a great point towards the end of public comment that there's many agencies involved, as we know. And so, as Dan mentioned, we're working quickly and as fast as we can, but also want to give enough time and thoughtful engagement with our partner agencies, the stakeholders for sure. So Bill will talk a little bit about the timeline. But yeah, just wanted to remind this project is a little more beyond just the fire focus, which is a huge focus for this, but also hear about some of the work we're doing in other fronts as well. So I'll go ahead and turn it over to Bill.
Great, thank you. Thanks for having us. So today we're going to present an update on the Flagstaff Corridor Operations and Management Project. The overall purpose is to review and identify potential improvements to OSMP managed land along the Flagstaff Road corridor with an emphasis on addressing management challenges and safety concerns. You might recall that we already provided an update to OSBT, and we also had a robust conversation at the OSBT retreat. Today, we're going to report on our progress and wanted to share an update. Next slide, please. The project will focus on the completion of a site plan, which is infrastructure-based, and management plan, which is more operations-based for the Flagstaff Road corridor. Standardize best practices for parking management, informed by existing visitor safety and management challenges. Define a process for making decisions about management and closure, formalization of roadway parking, and implementation. Staff will evaluate opportunities to improve visitor safety and natural resource protection using infrastructure and operational updates to manage visitor use, including prohibiting parking near sensitive habitat areas. Next slide, please. The current situation on Flagstaff Mountain are unsafe, with trespassing, illegal activities, resource damage, and wildfire risk being the primary impacts, especially at night. Next slide, please. We have incrementally implemented a number of actions along the Flagstaff corridor. We've removed vehicle access from select locations, closed select pull-offs adjacent to HCAs, revised parking hours, and removed all grills from picnic areas to reduce the risk of fire. Operationally, we increased our presence on the land, including night patrols. As we heard in public comment, there's a variety of things we have been doing, including limiting access and fire prevention. Next. There is plenty of existing planning guidance to carry out the operational and management actions that could potentially be implemented within this corridor. Some of the larger planning efforts include the Visitor Master Plan, West Trail Study Area Plan, as well as the OSMP Master Plan. Next. Some of the specific planning guidance directly aligns with the project as well. The management objectives that will soon be shown also aligns with the existing guidance. Next. Beginning in 2024, a staff team comprised of interdisciplinary subject matter experts within the department work to understand and define existing management, visitor safety, and natural resource impact concerns on Flagstaff. Staff also met with external stakeholders like Boulder Police, Boulder County Sheriff's Office, Boulder County Transportation, and Flagstaff residents to better understand their concerns. Through this coordination and building from the planning guidance, OSMP staff identified 5 key management objectives, which are further detailed in the memo. Next. Beyond our own desire to address concerns along the Flagstaff corridor, many others are affected by present-day activities, especially those happening after hours when the area is presumably closed. We intend to partner with all stakeholders to consider the many viewpoints and perspectives each offers when considering potential ideas and actions. Next. A key focus for the project includes visitor use areas and behavior on Flagstaff Mountain and associated challenges with safety, vandalism, natural resource impacts, including wildfire risk. OSMB staff have inventoried and begun to assess the current state of vehicle parking and visitor access along the Flagstaff corridor. The trailheads and access points were designated through the West Trail Study Area Plan, or West TSA, and allow for 62 total designated parking spaces along the Flagstaff corridor between the 1 and 5 mile markers. Next. So what is the difference between designated access and undesignated access? We define designated access as either a trailhead or access point. Here's an example trailhead on Flagstaff Road with the amenities noted. Next. In addition to the 5 trailheads, we also have 5 access points that include signs for wayfinding as well as our rules and regulations. Next. Of note is that 45 undesignated parking areas have emerged over time, some of which are directly adjacent to habitat conservation areas. Next. To the visitor, these parking areas appear similar. And I'm hoping you can see, even in plan view, just how similar they look. Next. How are the 45
See, we're going really fast. Just excuse me. Could you go back and tell us which ones are designated, which ones are, what are we looking at here?
Sure. On
Could
the
you
left,
interpret this a little bit?
trailheads, there's 5 designated trailheads, 2 that could potentially, I would just even say, be gated. The rest are pull-off style. There's 5 access points, which are pull-off style. And then there's 45 undesignated pull-offs that look very similar to the other ones.
And I'll just add, Bill, I think part of the point to be made is, just as we heard from the community, we have so many access places where people are parking, you know, all hours of the evening, all day long. And so that's a big part, is really distinguishing which are designated and we are meant to be there versus others that have just formed over time. But to the common visitor, it all looks the same.
And so every pull off by definition is undesignated?
No. There's 10 that are designated, and there's 45-ish that are undesignated. And normally the difference is some kind of signage that's letting you know you're meant to be there. Yep. All right. So how have the 45 plus undesignated pull-offs developed and why? What are the destinations people are seeking when they park along Flagstaff Road? This map attempts to understand the need for undesignated parking and how it affects our cultural resources and our habitat conservation areas. Next. We have 55 places visitors can park, but we've only designated 10 places in total. This view shows the location of the undesignated access points in relation to our dedicated ones. In general, there is an access point every 0.1 miles up to the furthest west point we manage, which is Green Mountain West Ridge Trail. Next. In order to provide OSBT with a sense of the methodology staff is using to generate and assess potential ideas and actions, below are a few examples from a longer list of potential short-term, mid-term, and long-term actions or ideas being considered by staff. Once assembled, this full list of actions and ideas will then be vetted over the next few months of the project. The full list of potential actions and staff's assessment of each will be provided to OSBT later in 2025. As you know, we are working closely with another OSMP effort, the Wildfire Plan, to implement additional ideas in this area of management. We'll also be moving swiftly on any quick wins and low-hanging fruit that can be implemented sooner. Next. Looking at the examples for improving visitor safety after hours, some ideas that are being vetted with staff include creating a safe turnaround that includes a nighttime ranger checkpoint, a gate, or both, as well as lights, cameras, call boxes, and license plate readers at select locations. Next. The project scope and charter are complete, and OSMP staff will work to assess the ideas and potential actions outlined prior. The team will also continue to engage with stakeholders, including the residents, Boulder County Sheriff's Office, Boulder Police Department, and Boulder Fire and Emergency Services. Staff anticipates updating OSBT on a regular basis with a more in-depth review and discussion at the next update. We agree with our neighbors, and we will be moving as quickly as possible. We are just trying to be realistic with timeframes, working among all the agencies and stakeholders, giving the many agencies with jurisdiction. Next. We welcome any feedback. We have a couple questions for you. And
Thanks,
I'll
Bill.
go to the next slide and then move back to this one. Really, the main desire, of course, is for our visitors to be able to safely access this special area. This includes responsibly enjoying the trails and night sky while staying outside of our HCAs and cultural resources. And thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so before we get going on board questions, and thanks for putting those up, you know, in an abundance of deference to me, which I don't know if I yet deserve, but I do appreciate. Brady wanted to let me know that I might have oversimplified the role of the board when calling it an advisory board, which is what the board does, but it also has some other powers. I think you know, my comments were mostly just to frame what this board's role is in this Flagstaff Mountain Road fire safety issue. But I wanted to give Brady an opportunity to explain maybe more of what he feels is germane to what the board does here.
Well, I thank you for that. I didn't want to make this a big deal. We are a little more than just an advisory board. And well, on the one hand, we do have very specific limitations of what we can and can't do. I certainly would not want to telegraph to the public that we don't take this very seriously, and we in no way intend to shirk our responsibilities in playing the role that we can to elevate this and try to move things forward. And so, thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Brady. I appreciate that.
In my responses, actually, I was looking at, well, okay, I think we do have more authority here. I was like, I mean, can I filibuster and keep the staff here all night until you guys actually decide to make a change?
You can.
But also, and that's a funny, not funny, but we can certainly stand up, and certainly I know we're willing to make calls to council. But the other thing is in regards to budget, which I really appreciated this, and I wanted to actually go back to it, the slide where you have the dollar signs. This is where we do have quite a bit of input, and I noticed that there was, I think we should be having a conversation about things that may require use of discretionary funds or other ways that we could inform the budget, whichever slide it's the pretty one there, that one. I couldn't find that key. I was scrolling through, I'm looking at this just on my phone in smaller size. I couldn't find that key when I was trying to review it. But we have some not allocated. We would need additional funding. So I think we can support in that way. And I think your comments were also well taken too. Yeah.
Thank you. So now can we go back to the slide with the 2 questions for board discussion? And any board member can jump in. Michelle, were you ready to speak?
Well, I guess I just had a clarifying question back to that other slide and our role in all of this, because Um, I think like you had some good points, Harmon. Like it's a county road. And I just want the community to know that while we care a lot about this, like we don't have the power to close the road. And then what would be interesting is in this menu of ideas, what could we actually, what could staff do on its own? Of course, with input from the board and the community. What could the board actually influence? Or what does the community need to rally around and apply pressure to the county? Because I know that resources are constrained. I think in general we want the same things. How we get there is probably a little bit different. We want a safer community and we want that to be a safer place for everybody. How we get there is a little different. So like, there's some things that I read. I was like, oh man, yeah, but God, can we actually do that? And so I would like to spend our energy on the things that we can actually influence rather than the things that we'd want, but we can't. But maybe there are other things that'll come out of this conversation, which is like we're coalescing around who can make these decisions, who can actually do this, and can we make sure that we all know who they are, and how we can pull off some of these ideas. I don't know, just an idea. I heard a lot of great ideas. I just don't know that we feel empowered. I'm sort of like more guided toward the ones that we can influence, and so I don't want the community to think that doesn't mean that we're writing it off. It's just that I think that there are certain things that we can actually play a part in. And I'm not exactly sure which ones. I'm going to have a guess by reading the list of which ones those are. But I think the exercise here is let's get an inventory of things that we think the community is interested in. The staff will vet those ideas and put eventually a dollar amount and a resource effort toward them, and then work through a process in which we not only get input from the neighbors who live adjacent to Flagstaff, but the whole community. So I already confessed that I'm really terrible at timing. Like I just imagine myself getting stuck at Rocker Ranch. And because I didn't, it's dark now and it's past 9 o'clock. I shouldn't have been out because my girlfriends are all mad at me because I told them it was going to be a shorter ride than it really was. And then now we can't get out, because the gate is closed. So I know that's probably one item that's probably a broader conversation with the whole community to just think through all of the implications of those kinds of things. But yeah, so I mean, I think of the inventory of the process, staff has just said, oh yeah, there's certain things that we can control under operations and management. And so you've listed a few of them. And then, and I don't know if we're not trying to solve this tonight, right? And we're trying to say, hey, we're kicking off the process. It's not that we're punting this all the way until 2025. There are some things you're going to do this year, and it's not on that timeline. You're going to do them as soon as you can. And then the ones that, like, for example, putting a gate on Flagstaff, that one's going to require the deciders, like the county, to actually decide to do that. I just want to clarify that that's what we're looking at in terms of this year, so that the community understands what we're looking at.
Okay, Bill, did you want?
I'll
did you
just
wanna
say the
something
list is
before we-
long. These are examples.
Mhm.
And the bigger list will be presented next time.
Okay, great. Anybody else? Go
Can,
ahead.
can you help me correlate between these 4 requests that we received in this memo today, if you've had time to read that, which it sounds like you did, and this list up here, which I assume you probably created prior to this? Can we just go one by one? Can we start with number 1? Immediately erect or install physical barriers that prohibit parking along official trailheads and other access areas during the currently illegal parking hours between 9 and 5.
Do you want to touch on that?
That's number
I'll just
1.
touch slightly on it. It's just
Yeah,
with
I just want to kind of
55
slow it down
pull-offs.
and do the correlation and hear from you and address these 4 things, because it does feel tangible for us to kind of go one by one through those together tonight. It would help me with my own time to not have to do the research later or call you guys later.
Yeah, with 55 pull-offs, it'd be incredibly hard to close each of those pull-offs just between nighttime hours and open things back up every single morning. I don't even think we would have enough barriers to do 5 miles worth of closures. And I don't think we have staff that would be able to pull them shut and open them up each day.
Did I hear that correctly? So am I doing the math right, that we have 55, I think I remember up there, access points, official, non-official, and where people are parking, and that those are occurring at least every 10th of a mile all the way up. Is that about right? Okay.
Jim, go back to that.
Yeah, and a physical barrier on those. I've spent so much time up these roads, so I'm pretty familiar, or up this road. So those are all, a lot of this is pull off, it's shoulder, it's gravel shoulder, essentially. So there's really no way to create a barrier there. We could put tow away zone scary signs, but other than that, I don't know how we would actually close those areas. There are only 5 that we could physically close. How beneficial would it be to close those 5 areas? In terms of what's going on up there on the road right now, what would be the benefit of those 5 areas? Are those like hot spots where we're having a lot of the issues? Do we know?
Really, 2 of the trailheads are only closable by the way they're designed, because they have a dedicated pull in to get to the parking area where you could actually put a gate. For example, Crown Rock is considered a trailhead, but it's essentially a pull off as well.
Mm-hmm. Is that where a lot of the activity is happening? Is that where a lot of the problems are occurring?
It's concentrated at Panorama Point, probably more than any other place.
Okay, and that's the one that's closest into town where the fireworks are being heard and disturbing the neighbors' sleep.
Right. Yep.
The thing to consider here is that right now what we're dealing with is Flagstaff, but I mean, I've lived in Boulder since 1999, and I've always lived, except for now, for the past 2 years, I've lived west of Broadway, but east of Broadway. I've always lived west of Broadway. I've lived in Newlands, Mapleton, Bear Creek, all of these neighborhoods, and we're starting to see now Uni Hill is organizing. All of these neighborhoods are going to start organizing. That will be our own little social wildfire that's going on. So we're talking, I think it's good to note where those sort of hot spots are, and to consider that. And to not just fall into the, I am a little concerned that we're falling into the agency think here, that we're saying, well, that's the sheriff's office and this is our department and that's not our department. When I was a child and I would ask my dad a question, he'd say, well, you need to talk to your mother first, or I need to talk to your mother. I would be livid. And by the time I became a rowdy teenager, I was just like, I'm going to do whatever. I'm not even going to ask you anymore. So I think that there's a tension building in this community. And when we as the city respond with this sort of parental, I got to ask the other parent kind of a mode, we're going to get more and more kickback from the community. And I would love to see us respond proactively in a really, like, to keep this going, to be aware that that's coming. So while I do understand that we have areas that are difficult to completely blockade, I think that we could take number 1 as an example and get really clear about what we can do. The key is, what can we do? This community is asking us for impact. They're asking us for results. So yes, there are things we can't do, but let's focus on what we can do and what kind of impact we're going to have by doing that. Let's make that very clear. So if there's this one spot on Flagstaff that's especially problematic, that's keeping the neighbors up at night, let's get busy and get something done there and let everyone know and put it in the daily camera that we've done this. And then, okay, yes, hands, snaps and hands. The other one is on the short term. So number 2, we have short term additional technology, including 360-degree cameras, trailers, permanent installation. Yeah.
Is there any other board member who wants to talk to number 1 before we move on?
Number 1 what?
Well, the number 1 was the parking areas that Sarah's just addressing. I don't want to just, have it be that Sarah asks all 4 questions show. I think everybody should have a chance to, as long as we're in this framework, respond. So,
well, I have a comment that is maybe somewhat related, if I can speak for a second and then hand it back over there. So on our retreat, and Jan Burton mentioned the safety of our staff and our rangers. And on a retreat, we had one of the rangers come in, and she offered us a ride along to see how bad it is. And she obviously was very moved that we were even showing any curiosity at all into her experience. And she's been patrolling this for years. I'd like to read something from our packet in October. This is from the Boulder County Sheriff's Office Special Operations Sergeant Matt Sanderson. He stated, over the past 10 years, we at the Sheriff's Office have seen an increase in criminal activity after the sun sets and individuals coming from further afield to cause problems on the mountain. It is generally accepted within our agency that on a Thursday, Friday, or Saturday night, you can drive up the 5-mile mark after 2,300 hours, and if you start contacting all the illegally parked cars on your way down, you will not make it to the bottom before you find someone who needs to be taken to jail. Ashamed to say it, but due to our minimum staffing levels as of late, deputies avoid, all capitals, proactive patrols on Flagstaff because they know they're going to find some sort of criminal behavior that will require an arrest and take them off the streets for a couple hours when we need every physical body we can get. So this is a major crisis that's been known, and for some reason, we're the ones holding the bag with our own staff, sending them up there. That's been my understanding. And so I want to agree with Sarah's, and I think what the community really wants is to know what we can do. And I think I'm not much of a sports person, so I'll probably blow this analogy, but I don't think this has to be a zone defense. We cannot deal with 45 pull-offs and however many parking areas and just have the road going. That is impossible, especially at this point. Maybe you will do, I mean, that's the sort of strategy that really will take a year to figure out. Okay, what are we going to do at this pull-off? What are we going to do at this pull-off? What is that going to do to the bouldering community? What's that going to do to the, I mean, yeah, that one's hard, okay? That's going to take time. What wouldn't take time is us talking to the sheriff's department, I mean, and getting a patrol car with lights flashing, looking scary. So somebody who's getting ready to drive up the road to do something thinks twice and decides that's not a good idea. I mean, I think this community would feel a lot better if we had kind of the category stuff that's going to take a long time to bake, and a few things we can do that would reasonably make a real impact soon. And I think, you know, the sheriff's department is on the record saying they're embarrassed about how much they avoid their own road. We've got our own staff on the record saying they're concerned about their own safety. We're putting them into positions that they didn't sign up for. I did a straw poll of some of our law enforcement officers when I ran into Encinitas. There were 3 of them there all at once. I can't remember everybody's name. I apologize. And I asked them about this, and they said they thought that the gate was the only answer. And now that was an informal thing, but basically saying that somehow preventing the free flow of people into this complicated, look at that map. There any number of places you can hide. Yeah, and I guess I just want to say one thing, then I'll yield the floor. I mean, I worked, as many of you know, in advocacy for public access to public lands for 11 years of my career. And so I do not even suggest the possibility of closing a public road lightly. I think there's ways we can get around what you were talking, Michelle. There's gates that will open for all traffic coming down and not going up. I mean, there's ways we can solve these things, and I do think we need a robust process around this, and I do think we probably need some kind of a test case with a limited scope so that the public knows if we try something out, it's not going to be the way it is forever after. I mean, there's best practices around that. I, for one, would vote for a patrol car up there 3 nights a week with the lights flashing all night, or something that we in the sheriff's department can do to address this issue now. So anyway, back.
Thank you. Thanks, Brady, because that is something that I have been asking for a while, is like, I think you can deter a lot of behavior. I use the King Soopers example and that because I shop at the Table Mesa King Soopers, that there was that tragedy there. And, but ever since there's been somebody standing at the door, sometimes 2 people at the door, the chances that something else is going to happen is probably really low, but they do it anyway. And so just somebody who's out there and and I've used this term before, mall cop, but maybe yes, an actual armed law enforcement person. I know that's a resource issue, but really to say we're watching you and we're cruising this road and don't hang out here. And I know that that's really hard to do. And so but I just wanted to say that I support an additional enforcement. I wish we would have had more enforcement over the last several years. I feel like we could have done a better job there, and we still can do a better job. Back to what can we control? I think that's one of them. Is it okay if I go back to your list? But I think if Panorama Point a place that we can control? Okay.
Yes.
I was looking on Google Maps, like where would you put the gate? Look, you guys can figure that out. But I think that's clear that's something because I know I read in the packet that some of the pull-offs are county land and like we actually couldn't actually do that, but this one we could actually do, right?
Correct.
And so is that just a resource issue to get that in a work planning issue? Is that something that has to wait until the end of the 2025 to get done, do you think?
I think and we talk about this daily, so I don't think I'm saying anything out of turn from the project staff, but our goal is if we identify an action and we do some vetting and we determine it's in our authority, it's in plan guidance, it's operational, we as staff can do it. And if it rises to a high impact thing, we'll do it. And we're certainly investigating the opportunity to pilot some infrastructure such as the closure. And that particular trailhead is a good poster child.
Okay. So would it be helpful to have a straw poll and to know who here supports that idea? Would that help things along? Or are you okay with us just saying we'd like you to keep going forward with that idea?
You know,
Not to say that it's a done deal.
I
I'm
would
just saying
say
that we
that-
support you.
I mean, we can do straw. I would say that there is alignment between the memo that Sarah, that you were reading from the FPAC and some of our own. That's why I said at the very beginning, we already, as we've been reviewing the emails, the memo, that there's a lot of overlap and same ideas. And just to really paint it simply, yeah, and we certainly don't want, we're not coming in here acting like mom and dad and we got to check in. It's just a simple, the county manages the road and the sheriff's office and those sorts of things. And we manage everything outside of that. So Michelle, to your question, yeah, we can easily manage and control access at Panorama Point as an example. It does take money. You know, there's gates. How do we install that? Operationally, that's why a lot of these options are very multifaceted. We can build things, but then you have to manage with the truck with the flashing lights at the bottom of the hill, with staff to go up and open and close a manual gate, for example, every morning, every evening. Those are the things when we talk about analysis and working through that. But yeah, to Dan's point, we've discussed a lot of these and have them kind of ready to go. And that's not one that we necessarily need to check in with the county and that sort of thing. It's more of a corridor discussion.
Okay. I do have a follow-up comment to the parking though, but if you want to talk more about the gate and Panorama
I
Point.
think we're still actually really talking about parking. That was the first
Okay.
item on the FPAC letter. So.
Okay. So I guess I'm in support. I mean, I'm clearly in support of doing what we can and what makes sense. The flip side of that is I know that there are all these pull-off points, and they are ways during the day where people can legally access public open space. And I'll just say that I have two kids who they're 13 now, but we used to go climb at Crown Rock. And so they would be super whiny but I would drag them out and I'd have my top rope out and I don't know when they're going to agree to go with me. But it's, really easy walking to get to Crown Rock. And it was, it's actually pretty difficult to park, but you score a spot and you feel like you've won the lottery. And rig the rope, climb with the kids for a couple of hours, have a little picnic, and then leave. I just worry about people because if you're thinking about erecting permanent, um, uh, yeah, barriers, but like giant, I'm envisioning giant boulders or something that now like say that you cannot park there. That we're and then there's this idea of a reservation system. Like it's just making it very difficult for people who want to do the right thing, who really enjoy being outside with their children, and want to follow the rules. And, or by the way, like my chances of starting a fire are extremely low, extremely, extremely low. So just want us to keep in mind that we are potentially impacting people who are the people we want to benefit from public spaces. So closing spaces down, um, I think is also going to make it harder for people like me who are actually good citizens and want to recreate responsibly. And by the way, it keeps my kids off screens, and they're going to be better citizens as a result. So that's all I have on the parking.
Thanks, Michelle. And before we wrap this one up, I wanted to give John a chance. John, you're up online, but can you unmute and talk to us?
Sure. I did have a couple things on this. Are we just talking about parking now, or?
Yeah, so we're kind of adopting Sarah's rubric and tracking along with the letter that was submitted to us by FPAC. And the first item in that letter was the request that OSMP immediately erect and or install physical barriers to prohibit parking along official trailheads and other access areas during the currently illegal overnight parking hours. So if you've got something on that, great.
I do. So, I think in terms of where we're thinking about erecting parking barriers, like our pull-offs a part of the problem and where we're seeing the problem. I'd want to make sure we're focusing on areas where the problem is, as well as areas that we have control over, such as Panorama Point, and would kind of echo what everyone else has said on the parking.
Okay. So Sarah had her hand up first for that. So Sarah, if you want to follow up on your first comment, and then Brady.
Hopefully I have a reputation by now of throwing totally left field ideas into the scene. I'm curious, like I'm thinking about aligned incentives. I'm curious if we put up a bunch of tow away zone signs and then we gave the towing company the suggestion that they heavily police, especially at night when we know. I mean, what you were reading is profound. So that's a heck of a lot of business for a towing company. And that has nothing to do with the sheriff's department, and that has nothing to do with our budgets in our department. So just one idea that came to me.
I just want to reiterate, I think Michelle made a great point. And I, for what it's worth, I don't support closing any existing parking, even the undesignated stuff. I mean, maybe there's one or two where you're just like, hey, there's other reasons, but I just know how hard it is to find a place to park, to do various activities up there. And again, I don't think we're going to get there with trying to manage every single pull off. I just don't think we are. And I think if we did, we'd be doing what Michelle's concerned about, which is impacting people who are doing daytime use, who aren't smoking, who aren't starting fires, who have a basically 0.00% chance of starting a fire themselves, unless there's some kind of weird engine fire, which apparently happened recently. So it's not zero. But anyway, I just think I would not advocate for a gate closure during the day, to be clear about that as well. I think what we're really talking about is stuff that's happening after hours when we're already have no parking and then people just ignore it. So anyway, I just wanted to clarify that.
Yeah, can I say something about that real quick? Just there's so many undesignated ones next to places people shouldn't be going, like habitat conservation areas. One of the examples we put in there is if we did close some of those down, that we assess where other parking might be so that people can go to the places they're supposed to be going.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I think that in terms of trying to do something that really is helpful right away, Brady, you really did a great job identifying all the concerns that we would have to go and look at to talk about what parking areas should be closed, what shouldn't, what populations they're serving, what access they're giving. Now, Bill is telling us, we probably do want to look at closing some of the ones that are next to HCA's. But I liked your analogy about playing zone instead of man-to-man. Maybe if you were better at sports analogies, you would.
Player to player. I wasn't going to say man to man
Yeah.
because that's not what we're saying anymore.
Okay, so player to player is now the new term. All right. And I think that the prioritization of some of those really impactful changes that could be made on property that we do have control over, I think Panorama Point just keeps coming up. I will leave it at that. And why don't we just, if people are comfortable with this rubric, why don't we move to the second one? Sarah, you want to take the lead?
Yes, and thank you for framing it as a rubric and helping me out there. I appreciate it. I was feeling stressed but urgent to. Okay. So the second one is short-term additional technology, including 360-degree camera trailers or permanent installations positioned in identified high-incident areas. Install license plate readers as related and related signage communicating that vehicles entering Flagstaff Road are subject to monitoring. Well, I like turning the question to the team here to say, can you help me correlate with what you've already been thinking about? What's realistic? What's low hanging? Is this short term? Is this realistic? Or why not? What other alternatives could we do? What should we be thinking about here?
I'll just say one thing to know is we do have a camera at Panorama Point right now, and it hasn't deterred the activity. I think that everyone has hoped it would.
What kind of camera?
Is it
Oh,
one of those
chassis?
big tall ones with the scary blue lights that you see in the parking lots?
Exactly.
And nobody cares?
No, it doesn't seem like it. We've caught people lighting a fire on it and everything.
Uh-huh. Yeah, but the population that we're really probably talking about here would.
Well, and I would add, just like the slide indicates in some of these potential lists, I mean, we're exploring cameras, lights, Bill mentioned call boxes, license plate reader systems, just as you see here. So I would say, again, just in the brevity, there's alignment between those two suggestions and ideas. But once again, that's an enforcement, that's adding that program to our system, who manages that, the data, So again, not to, it takes a lot of time, but just outlining the realities of adding that kind of program to us or the county or whomever would be managing that.
My personal opinion on that is I'm still old fashioned. I'm very high touch. I don't believe that digital cameras or monitoring is the way to deter people. I think it's having someone like this person with a stop sign and a vest standing somewhere and having a clipboard in their hand and checking people in and out after hours that want to come up on the hill and going back and looking at a license plate and writing it down and saying hello to the people in the car, just old school. Which in terms of cost, it is a staff person, but that is employing a person. Which is always a good thing. And it's relatively, again, it's more old fashioned. So if I were going to, that would be my suggestion, is that we keep it high touch and old fashioned instead of high tech.
Yeah, and if I could just add one little item. Again, this list that we've included in the memo and we're talking about this evening, it's very preliminary. And this is a great exercise to show alignment between the community and some of what staff's been thinking. I also wanted to highlight, and Michelle, you asked this a second ago, in the next steps when we identified some community touch points, that was kind of the purpose and the goal, is to say, hey, we know the community has a lot of ideas. We've also vetted this list to really be able to talk through these. Tonight, we're kind of just batting around some, it might be this, it might be that. But once we go through that rigorous analysis and we can really say, we can do this immediately, low cost, et cetera. So I just want to set that context and that framework. And that was the purpose, to talk with the community and at least have a listening session of like, hey, these are some of the thoughts and ideas. What might we have missed, or what others do you think? And then we were going to come back to the board so that you all have the benefit, not just a straw poll, but hey, like Brady mentioned, the recreation uses, the Flagstaff house, all the residents that live up there, try to involve everyone in that conversation. So tonight absolutely was not a, we're making decisions tonight. It was very preliminary. And we want to, daylight some of this, at least through listening to the community as well. I didn't mean to pause you on that second point, but I just want to add that.
Yeah, I'll also just throw out the blend of implementation and planning. And when we come back, let's say we come back to you in September, we will likely come back and say, and this was on the list, and we're starting to implement it. So we're not just going to wait to see, are you going to give us the thumbs up on some of this? Some of that stuff we definitely want to vet, and part of the vetting would be the pulse of the community, the pulse of this board. But there's other things that are going to be more that low-hanging fruit. We feel like it's in our purview as managers that we can go out and implement, and we might be reporting back in saying, this was on the list, we vetted it, and we're doing it, FYI. And so.
Yeah, so with that in mind, I think, knowing that there are some things that are programmatic possibilities for staff to implement at the administrative level, if there's something that a board member feels really, put upon by, aghast at, like, you're going to put license plate readers on our public road, apparently now is the time to let staff know that you object to that, as well as things that you're in favor of. So
They're at every parking garage in the city right now.
say that.
The license plate readers.
Yeah, I mean it's the world we live in. That people say, I don't want to give the government my social security number. What? They're the ones who gave it to you. So I get it. So anyway, next, anybody have more comments around this particular issue? This is the number 2.
I think it's going to be a blend
technology.
I think it's going to be a blend of technology and in person. I think it's complicated, and I think good for you all in beginning to experiment. So,
And I'll add to, one of the things we're doing with this list is talking to people that have done some of these things already, so that we're seeing their lessons learned when we go and get ready to implement something as well.
Yeah, for instance, the gate's a perfect example of these guys went down and spent hours with Jefferson County, who did a gate, and the lessons learned, they're like, we wouldn't do that same thing again, and here's why. So, yeah, hopefully we can avoid some fits and starts by implementation ideas by talking to folks who have done it.
Awesome.
Dan, I did notice that you all made note of that in the packet, that you had that meeting with Jeffco about
Lookout
their
Mountain.
Yeah, and so could you, Harmon, if I'm off the rails here, let me know. But I'd be really curious to hear just a few bullet points on what the big takeaways are, because I think
Yeah,
there are a
it's
few
the
people
place.
who think that a gate could be, if not a panacea, at least a big part of the solution. So what are the early lessons from Jeffco?
Good connectivity to electrical or wireless providers, aesthetics, because some of this gate technology is going to put unwanted items in people's backyards, making sure they work and making sure they're foolproof. One of the fire chiefs threw something under the gate that was metal, and it opened it. So if he could do that, he's like, any kid that wants to get up here can do that. And also having security back it up was another thing that they noted, because once one person gets in, let's say a resident comes down and the eye opens the gate up, someone's waiting there to get in. And as soon as one person from the group gets in, all their friends can get in, because they can trigger the gate opening once they're on the inside and let 5 more cars come in. So all those things have to be considered. How long is the gate open so that 5 cars can't get in? What is the technology we could do so that a piece of metal doesn't open it up for someone else? Like, the devil's in the details.
Yeah, and just infrastructure breaks, infrastructure doesn't work as it's supposed to all the time. A lot of staff time to go up and manually open, like Bill mentioned, or weather concerns with snow pile up on the gate and different things. And again, in that example, Lookout Mountain, there's residents that live up there as well. And so a lot of phone calls in the middle of the night, and how do we respond to that? And someone's stuck, and like Michelle, you said, if you're at Walker Ranch, how do you get back to town before the gate closes, that sort of thing. So just a lot of nuances of, it's not just put a gate up, lock it, and we walk away, and so we just have to work through that.
Did you have anything? Okay.
I think we could, I don't know if you want to, if there's additional input that's available. My main message here is that I want the community to know that I feel you, I hear you. I live right next to NCAR. We were evacuated. We saw the fire there. We also are close to Marshall. My kids were also traumatized by all of that. Keep our special things in a bag. So I relate to a lot of things that people have said. And I want staff to approach this as a community solution, that we are thinking about all those other constituents as well.
John, do you have anything?
Nothing else on this one.
Okay.
I'll save it for the next one.
Are we good to move on to 3? Okay, so 3 is the one about proactive enforcement, physical patrols, presence of OSMP, I guess, rangers and Boulder County Sheriff's Office staff to deter criminal activity. Sarah, you want to get us started on that?
Sure. I do think this is, we explored this starting at the retreat in October. I understand it's a conversation. It feels to me, for the public who is here or listening, that this would be a good area to maybe concentrate some energy in communicating with the sheriff's office as well to support. I don't think anyone's trying to divert responsibility necessarily, but this is a resource constraint topic. And it's a public safety issue, and it's embedded in larger public safety issues, is my understanding from the sheriff department's perspective. We haven't been personally here advocating in that regard. I know that the staff has been working closely with the sheriff's department, and I think that this is a pretty tough one because we're talking about miles of road and the amount. If you just think about being at night, having cars policing and patrolling, there are so many areas where people can be. The amount of patrolling that is required it's a challenge. Is that right? Am I hitting that?
It's a challenge, but it's
correctly?
definitely something that we're exploring. There's alignment in there of what does that greater collaboration look like? What is possible? What can we pilot? What can we test out in that idea of more presence on the mountain? I mean, it's certainly
What can our
on the
department
list.
do? What are you guys doing, or on the list? The other thing I think that is being requested, what can we do now? What can we do by May? What can we do before the fire season? We've been asked, are there any things in here that we're discussing that can be done before the fire season?
I can just mention that, and if Janelle Frieston, our deputy director overseeing our ranger program, wants to add, but in simple terms, we have increased extra patrols in the evening at night. It's certainly, as Burton Stoner, our ranger manager, has mentioned, it's a high priority area, as it always has been. So they're adding that. There is more capacity that they've seen from the sheriff's office. They've had increased staffing and that sort of thing. So I would say from what I understand, it's trending in the right direction. But like Dan mentioned, it's an ongoing, evolving situation. And you can imagine, I don't want to speak for either of those teams necessarily, but this is a concern for all throughout the region. And so every community is asking about increased protection and safety and prevention, that sort of thing. So with any government aid, they're managing resources appropriately and trying to deploy as best they can. But we have highlighted that and prioritized that, from what I understand.
Great. I realize I skipped over one thing that I meant to say. When we're talking about public safety and when we're talking about, please don't use your fireworks out here.
Right.
That's one thing. Or please go make out somewhere in town. That's one thing. But when we're talking about when we're talking about guns and violence, we do need trained personnel up there, and it isn't fair to be putting our rangers up there.
Yeah, we only go up in pairs now after dark.
Yeah, so I do feel protective after meeting with the ranger and hearing her stories. I feel protective about that, and yeah, great.
Yeah, whoever wants to jump in. Anybody else?
I'm happy to jump in here.
Yeah, go ahead, John.
So I was noticing, like, this is a City of Boulder problem. And I think on your stakeholder slide, I apologize, I've got a sinus infection, my head's in a fishbowl. I don't recall seeing the City of Boulder as a stakeholder on that slide. And if the City of Boulder is not a stakeholder, we're not engaging the city at the city level for this problem, I think it's a pretty huge oversight. I realize that, all of this land right now is not within city limits. But that doesn't mean it has to always be that way, right? The city has a lot more resources, potential to, send more patrols up there as we're talking about patrols. And I would echo, what some of the other board members have said around, putting our rangers in positions, that are really dangerous and pushing them more towards law enforcement instead of being rangers, right? Um, and I know I brought it up at the retreat, right? But, how can we get the city of Boulder more involved in helping deal with these problems, help deal with the fires, and prevent them, right? Like, does it mean annexing part of Flagstaff or annexing, the road itself, right? So that BPD can patrol up there. I think it would be prudent of us to, kind of consider all options if we're really looking at everything here. How can we, give the city jurisdiction here to deal with this problem that is the city's problem in many ways. The other thing I'll call out with the gates, I missed my note here, is it's not just residents up on Flagstaff Road. There is at least one business I know of up on Flagstaff Road. So as we're thinking about access and things like that, we should take that into account as well. I'm a big fan of Flagstaff House, so I want to make sure I can still go up there for dinner.
Thanks, John. And I'm going to jump in right behind you there because I feel pretty passionate about some of the items that you were bringing up. And I think staff just put up the slide. And so the Chamber of Commerce, which would probably have a say about whether Flagstaff House was having trouble getting patrons, the police department, Boulder Fire, they're all listed on the slide. But I can understand how you might have missed that because I think Bill was changing the slides when he got about halfway down on the left, and so we might have missed the list on the right. But it does speak to stuff that we talked about and that I think we heard rangers talk about and that I brought up too at our retreat. The notion that when we are using rangers to patrol a public road and they're really providing law enforcement services on a highway and not patrolling open space land, that it takes two of them after dark. And then the next day we lose the services of those rangers because essentially they have to sleep it off because they've been up all night patrolling this road. There may be a better way of doing this. And we heard that the county sheriff's department doesn't like to patrol Flagstaff because they either have to come all the way across Gross Dam Road, a long dirt road from Crescent Park, or they have to go all the way across the city of Boulder, which is outside of their jurisdiction, just to get to the patrol area of the county-owned road that's the strip of blacktop that's called Flagstaff Mountain Road. And so, we talked about intergovernmental cooperation, maybe giving Boulder PD jurisdiction to patrol the road, maybe sharing resources, maybe, having open space and mountain parks redetail rangers to doing more rangering and less cop kind of stuff, and allocating some additional resources to BPD, because if we're losing two rangers for a whole night and a day afterwards, maybe one deputy could do it more efficiently from a citywide perspective. And so I don't like the idea of people who signed up to be rangers and do interpretive work, take kids on hikes and stuff like that, essentially putting on a sidearm, getting in a car and driving all night. That just doesn't sound like that job description to me. And, I don't want to presume what rangers like to do, but every time I've asked an individual ranger who's a friend or an acquaintance or somebody I get to ask, they say, yeah, it's not exactly what I signed up for. So I do really feel passionate about this. And given what we heard about some of the technological difficulties with the gate, I think, and what Sarah said about touch not tech, I really think that patrolling with the appropriate resources should become a priority for us.
Mm-hmm. Harmon, I just appreciate most of what you said, all of it, in fact. But I just want to make a clarification that our rangers are post-certified sworn peace officers. They go to police academy. Even if Flagstaff wasn't here, they're doing law enforcement on open space. It's that day and age that we live in, and they're very well trained to be able to perform that duty. It's a slice of their duty.
Mm-hmm.
They do naturalists, they do search and rescue, they do interpretation, and they do in law enforcement. Whether Flagstaff Mountain was there or not, we have an arm of our department that is fully commissioned, post-certified, trained law enforcement
Thanks.
peace officers.
Yeah, I really appreciate you adding that. Thank you, Dan.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Michelle.
I'll make this brief. I obviously support more patrolling. Some of the issues that have been identified is the encampments, and and them starting fires. That's no technology, no gate is actually going to solve that problem because they don't largely have cars anyway, and so they're there and they're starting a fire. The only way that we're going to be able to address those things is through more patrolling. That's it.
Brady.
John brought up the interesting point about annexing the road. Anyway, it's an interesting kind of intellectual exercise, if nothing else. I don't know how feasible such a thing would be, but I also remember, aside from the quote I read about the sheriff's department admitting that they were intentionally avoiding it, I also remember it was a long drive. And so what would it take, in your all's view, to put this more front and center for our own city of Boulder police and get them more involved? What might that look like?
Great question. You want? Go first. So engaging with PD, the police department. Yeah, I don't know if Dan or Janelle want to talk about more of that coordination.
Yeah, we are. There's a lot of collaboration going on right now in terms of internal stuff with our rangers. What is deeper collaboration between PD and rangers in general outside of the Flagstaff context? That conversation is happening very robustly right now. And so we're working arm in arm with Ranger or PD leadership about that. We're looking at other models throughout the Front Range of the collaborations that happen at the ranger level versus law enforcement, such as sheriff's offices or PDs, depending on the jurisdiction, the agency that we're looking at. So yeah, it's a ripe conversation. Those type of conversations could easily transition into what's greater enhanced collaboration look like for something very specific like Flagstaff Mountain. And I would be very surprised if those conversations didn't happen, because they're on the list, if those didn't happen fairly shortly.
Yeah. And I was just going to say, I mean, the police department, that's why we did identify them as a stakeholder, and there is a presence, like when we have a SWAT situation or certain emergency situations, it's all hands on deck up there. And so there is, enforcement and work that's happening. But yeah, we can explore that and talk through it. Again, that's an area with the law enforcement we need to kind of think through more. Bill, were you going to add something?
Just something that's not on the example list, but spoken to us by the residents at our living room listening session, is that what if we proactively had something before it transitioned from a city road to a county road? Could we have a DUI checkpoint there? Could we have things that we did on city land before it became county? And I think that's what we're going to explore in the future too.
Yeah, I don't think the necessary big hurdle is enforcement abilities. BPD are deputized and are so the enforcement issue is something that needs to be worked out. I don't think it's insurmountable. It probably is a staff capacity, and we're probably looking at overtime as a possibility. And so what does that look like in order to take staff from one area, put it to another? How much is that going to cost? Who's going to do it? Can we, all three jurisdictions, share in that? What's that look like? Can we pilot something? All that kind of stuff.
So that feels like a 3, 6, 9 month out kind of, when I hear that, knowing what it takes to address budgeting, staffing, training, implementation issues, where that is that's a longer range thing that we need to be communicating as longer range by necessity. Yeah, is that correct? Or that's not a by May. That's not a, we'll see you next month with increased rangers. I'm asking out of I'm trying to get a sense so that the public is hearing it too. Yeah.
We already do offer our rangers, especially as we start to gear into more of the season, the Flagstaff season. overtime options for ranger pairs to be up there. That is something that that is already available and something that we'll be continuing to ask. So that is
It could be
happening.
more immediate. Oh, great.
But
Okay.
in terms of looking at all three agencies and how we could all partner and what's the willingness, what's the capacity, what are the hurdles? Is it money? Is it people, boots on the ground? That probably is a little bit of a longer. But
That was very clarifying.
How to what extent do you think this is the timing is gonna work to show up in our 2020 the budget we're working on right now? Like, will we see a big, can we see a big plug in there, like $300,000 for something that we're working on right now, whether that's, shared staff, a big shiny high-tech gate that doesn't fail when snow falls on it. I mean, I would love to see some appropriations in our process, even if we don't know exactly what we're going to spend it on, because it seems like, in spite of what one of the people, I think was Lauren Feldman, said, that the city said that more staffing will not solve this issue. I'm getting the sense that actually more staff would help solve this issue. And so I'd love to see some of our budget focus towards this in this process.
Okay.
Anybody else? John?
I'm good.
So we're talking about proactive enforcement. Anybody else with any comments on this before we move on? No? Okay. So then the last one is the consideration of making Flagstaff Road a gated 24-hour license plate reader equipped entry point for and resident only access during times when parking is prohibited. That's a summary of the paragraph. Any thoughts? Sarah?
Okay. You know what? This is one of the most beautiful roads in the world. It truly is. I have been all over the world into the world's most beautiful roads on purpose, and I can say that what we have here is a total gem. I don't think it's totally out of range for us to consider having this become a permitted park-like area. I know that there is friction around that, and that may be audacious for me to say, but what I would love, if we are going to start monitoring and managing the flow of traffic, is that we also monetize that to put towards some of these things, like staffing for additional patrols, like having high-tech gates. And I don't feel shy personally about claiming that area for what it is, which is one of the most beautiful places in the world. We do need to protect it in the community for fire, but I would see it as almost like a permitting opportunity for us in some way, shape, or form to leverage all the systems that we have in place and to put something there rather than a sort of, it's a gate because we have a problem and we're trying to control and keep people out. Like, welcome to this beautiful space. We're all here to take care of it, and money talks when people are going up there.
Okay, I want to focus on inclusion and making sure that people can, of all economic statuses, can continue to access our public lands, and not just those who are resourced. I'm really bummed that we're at this point in our community where we can't trust anyone. I just feel really super disappointed that we're here. But we are. And I would just like to make sure that staff reaches out to all folks and gets their inputs as well, their input as well, not just the folks who are super activated already, but that we are communicating it to the broader community, because I think that there are going to be some pretty big feelings, and all of them are valid. So I just want to make sure that we are listening to all of them.
I think it's worth a look, and it sounds like that's what you're looking at it, the possibility of a gate. And I guess the only thing I would say is if we get to an implementation point, making sure that if there's a test phase. There's some people who believe, and this may not apply to us, that governments tend to close things, and when they close them, they don't tend to reopen them. And that is not simply a cynical position. That's just looking at the history of of access issues and public processes. And so I think to kind of echo maybe what Michelle said, if a gate is part of what we end up doing, I think we have to be really careful, not just about the technology, but of course, how we implement it, how we evaluate it, and ensuring the community that if we do a test phase, there really is a test phase and there's going to be another opportunity to comment and see how we did. But it just seems to me that when we think about resources and how much it costs to put 2 people in a patrol car up and down, and if it's indeed true that they can't go to the top and get to the bottom without having to go to jail 3 nights a week, that a gate may play a role, even if it's midnight to 4. I don't know what, there's a million options, but I just think it's certainly worth looking at, and it's going to be politically charged.
So just to loop it back to last month when we brought you our planning and design conversations of how that might look over the next 6 years. As you remember, we put a placeholder for some staff capacity to hold depending on what comes out of this effort. There's going to be low-hanging fruit, stuff that we might even come back to you in a few months and saying, hey, we're already doing it. Stuff that are like, we are actually prepared and geared to do. Stuff saying, hey, a little bit of 2026 money and we're going to do it. And then there's stuff saying, we've got this idea, we vetted it, we think it's worth continuing to vet, but it's more of that planning effort because there's a lot of community engagement. It's not just like what the 3 of us up here think we ought to do. There's community conversations, and closing off all of Flagstaff is probably, I'm hedging our bet a little bit. That might be one of those conversations that we put towards, that's a bigger conversation. That might have a project in and of itself in terms of what the engagement looks like, what the conversations look like that we ought to have. What this team may do is vet it as best as we can and then kick it out to that. So that's that longer term look. So that's where the mix is going to come, and that might be one of those that deserves that more robust conversation than is going to happen in this management and operations and infrastructure realm.
Jeff, did you want to add something?
Oh, I was just going to mention, just in terms of the budget, that's kind of what that legend was on that list. I think, Sarah, you mentioned the $1 sign was just a very initial cursory review that we feel that could probably be absorbed within a current budget scenario. The $2 sign started to highlight something that might be included in like the capital improvement program that we review. And then third was, kind of what Dan was mentioning. This is likely something that's going to take quite a bit of work and discussion and maybe some large capital investment. So the other thing I wanted to highlight, and this kind of goes to Dan's point as well, this project, some of the genesis was the county is actually planning to resurface the roadway, Flagstaff Road. That project was scheduled, I think, for this year. When they first started working with us. I believe it's been paused or delayed until perhaps next year or 28. I don't want to speak for the county.
It's unfunded at the moment.
So in other words, that's another opportunity, and that's why Bill went through a lot of the quick slides about access points and closures. There's some good synergy of cost savings, cost effectiveness if we partner with the county in those improvements. But again, we're not going to wait to do all these things for 3 years. There's a lot of things, that was what I'm highlighting in that list that we could likely do soon. But then some of these might be more expensive, and we'll plan that in the budget.
Okay. All right. So can we pop up your last slide so we can see if using that rubric got us to the answers to the questions you put up?
Yeah. And it was mainly about the scope, any questions about the outcome of the project. Yeah.
Okay, so do we have any feedback on the scope, next steps, expected outcomes? I think we managed to address that one. And then does the board have any feedback on the goals and objectives outlined to identify future strategies? And I think especially with the last bullet that number 4 that we were just going over from the FPAC letter, we got through that too. So I'd just like to say I really appreciate the level of care that I'm seeing in terms of analyzing what we can do on a short-term, medium-term, long-term basis, what we need to talk about on a deeper level with the community and with electeds and with other agencies and other jurisdictions, and what we might be able to just do as management priorities right now to help manage the OSMP lands and access and safety along that corridor. So thank you guys very much. Thanks,
thank you.
staff. Excellent presentation. Does anybody else have any parting thoughts?
I just want to say that we talked about generally, assuming that we had read the packet and making the presentations light and the discussion heavier, and A+ on that. And so thank you for that. I had to interrupt you one time because I was off the back, but it was going fast. But I really appreciate the effort there, and I think it leads to better meetings. And I would just encourage you all to keep us informed when there are actions that you're taking. That obviously the public is frustrated and is urging a sense of urgency and action. And I know there's a lot that you are doing, and we don't always see it. I certainly don't. And so I think the extent to which we as a board and you, all of us, can communicate what's happening to give the public the assurance that we have heard them, that we do feel a sense of urgency, I think that would be really beneficial to the community.
Yeah. Well, we appreciate the dialogue and discussion. This has been really more than we were anticipating. So this is great.
Well, listen, we've been at this for over 2 hours and 20 minutes, so I'm going to call a break and give the public chance to shuffle if folks who are only
Yeah,
here for
maybe
the Flagstaff
Charlotte
matter.
and team, if you want to make your way down, we'll get ready to
Yeah,
go on
give staff a chance to
looking
shuffle.
at well, thank you. Yep. Okay, great. Well, we're back from break, and we're moving on down through the matters from the department. And the last two items tonight are budget. And it's kind of cool because we're going to be talking citywide and higher level type budget, and with Charlotte Husky from our city finance department. And then we're going to have a conversation about OSMP budget specifically. So we're going to start it off with our long-term financial strategy conversation. We actually daylighted a little bit of this, was it last month, to you all? And just so happens that we had the opportunity for Charlotte to come and to talk a little bit more about what's happening with this project. So turn it over to you, Charlotte.
Thanks, Dan. Good evening, board members. I'm Charlotte Husky, Budget Officer for the city with the Finance Department. It's good to see you all again. I think it's been about a year now since I've been here, and we're here tonight to talk about the long-term financial strategy. It's a citywide financial initiative that we have been working on and was indicated as a top council priority last April in 2024. Before diving into the project of the long-term financial strategy, which I'll provide hopefully just an 8 to 10 minute presentation, we can move to the next slide. I will share just a high-level forecast overview of some of the major items that we're looking at as we're working on the 2026 budget development and forecasting forward for 2026. You're good. So in some of the forecasting considerations that we're thinking about for the 2026 budget, you all are I'm sure, familiar with the limited ongoing revenues that we have for new additional enhancements and additional programs and services that is primarily associated with the city as a whole. The majority of our tax, of our revenues comes from sales and use tax, and we've been seeing slowing growth in recent years. That is something that we are absolutely taking into consideration in regards to the federal uncertainty that's occurring currently. We also are seeing impacts from existing legislation from the state legislature for our other major revenue source, property tax. Last year, there was legislation that was put in place in May of 2024, and this was revising our property tax growth and potential revenues down. There was an additional piece of legislation that was passed last September as well. And so we're beginning 2026 across the city and revising our forecast down due to that legislation that passed last year at the state legislature. The second bullet here is really looking at our federal uncertainty and This is a major forecasting consideration for us across multiple items. There are several key items that are listed here on the right-hand side, including looking at our federal awards that the city receives on an annual or one-time or multi-year basis. That's both direct funding that the city receives from the federal government as well as indirect funding that support to advance city goals and programs and services across the community. We're also looking at the consideration for tariffs. The update that was shared forward today with the potential of tariffs occurring and then the pause. So we are continuing to look at what this consideration might mean for some of our operating and our capital costs, particularly looking at fleet and technology costs. And so this is an absolute consideration that we are thinking about and heading into the 2026 budget development for cost of capital infrastructure as well as potential impacts to consumption. Finally, the last note that we're looking at here and monitoring at the federal level is tax policy changes. So we have the benefit as a municipal government to issue tax exempt debt. And so there is talk about removing that tax exempt status and issuing taxable debt. So that would have impacts on our interest rate for cost of capital. And so there are items that we're continuing to monitor that implicates really federal uncertainty as we head into the 2026 budget development process. The long-term financial strategy that I'll talk more on the next several slides, we're really focused on with this year, focusing on 2025 potential tax ballot measures, focusing on funding underfunded services, as well as total cost of ownership. So looking at capital infrastructure and capital maintenance projects that we have a backlog of across the organization. We're also continuing recognizing our ongoing revenues for new ongoing programs and services are limited. We're continuing to look at flexibility across all of our city funds and realignments of our budget dollars and utilizing outcomes and measures to help support in that effort for what we're seeing across the board. We're also focused on this heightened importance of the citywide sustainability, equity, and resilience framework and alignment toward the outcomes and performance data to help inform our budget direction for this year and really looking at organizational resiliency and coupling all of these items together as we're looking toward 2026. Can go to the next slide. So the long-term financial strategy is focused on the development of a citywide strategy to help guide fiscal decision-making, as well as long-term financial health of the city. It is a policy priority that was indicated a top priority from City Council last April during their work planning session. And this is really building upon prior policy recommendations from a Blue Ribbon Commission report that was issued in 2008 as well as 2010 and a 2019 Budgeting for Resilience report. And these prior policy recommendations had about 70 recommendations. Some of the key highlights are here, calling for a comprehensive financial plan, cautioning the city's over-reliance on sales and use tax, as well as the dedication of funding sources, recommending the identification of core city services and service level prioritization, and encouraging the development of an outcomes-based system for budgeting that the city has been on this journey for implementation of outcome-based budgeting over the past 3 years. We have an internal, in terms of the structure that is supporting the project, we have 4 primary work streams with this initiative with 2 phases of work. We received policy guidance from a monthly meeting that we have with the Financial Strategy Committee. That's a council committee comprising 3 council members. We also have several touch points with City Council. We just had our first last Thursday with City Council to share this work forward. And we also have an internal executive steering committee that we work with on a monthly basis to help provide policy guidance. Next slide. In terms of the current and future state of the long-term financial strategy, you all may be familiar with this if staff has shared this forward already. And in terms of the current state, we know that we have a high amount of revenues that are dedicated across the city. And what this means for us as an organization, as well as in the recommendations coming forward from the Blue Ribbon Commission reports and Budgeting for Resilience report, is that this reduces our flexibility to be able to address community needs of the moment and community priorities priorities of the moment. In the future state of the long-term financial strategy, we're looking at increasing our flexibility of funding to be able to meet emerging and changing needs. Our major revenue source, as I mentioned, is sales and use tax. And in recognizing the experience that we felt during the pandemic period with the drastic decline of sales and use taxes, we recognize that this reduces our stability and predictability of our revenue sources as a city and our major revenue sources as a city. And so what we're looking at within the future state of this project is increasing our stability and diversity of our revenues so that we're able to have less reliance on sales and use tax. We recognize that we have a significant backlog of unfunded and underfunded needs across the city, as well as expiring funding sources. And so this proves difficult to ensure reliability for funding of programs and services across the city. We're looking at increasing reliability through establishing guiding principles, revenue identification, and community prioritization to meet service level demands. And then finally, the current state is this recent practice, particularly in thinking about the pandemic period. And in recent years is focused on short-term decisions without a longer-term strategy. And so as part of this work, we're focused on developing a long-term financial plan, and I'll speak to that on the next slide, but a longer-term strategy that will help us to focus more holistically and comprehensively to support core service levels across the city as well as community needs. Next slide. So we have 4 work streams that we've established within this project. That includes the long-term financial plan, alternative funding mechanisms, core service levels, and the multi-year ballot measure strategy. Within the long-term financial plan, we're focused on and have developed guiding principles associated with the long-term financial strategy. We've performed a current state inventory and assessment report against all of the 70 recommendations that have come forward from the Blue Ribbon Commission reports, as well as the Budgeting for Resilience report. And we're focused in phase 2 of this effort on the development of a 5-year comprehensive plan for the organization. Under alternative funding mechanisms, we're looking at identifying alternative funding opportunities, revenue opportunities, including looking at taxes, fees, as well as other potential revenues such as grants or public-private partnerships, for example. Under core service levels, we're focused on identifying the levels of service that the city should provide for programs and services through benchmarking analysis and fund our future community conversations that are to come forward this summer and fall. And we hope that you all are invited to participate in those conversations that we have as part of this phase 2 of the long-term financial strategy. And finally, the multi-year ballot measure strategy is focused on the development of a framework, a 2-year framework for 2025 potential tax ballot measure considerations, as well as potential tax ballot measure considerations in 2026, as well as performing comprehensive community engagement as part of Fund Our Future. And again, I'll share more of that toward the end of the presentation, but invite you all to participate in that effort that we're performing. Go to the next slide. Oh, good. Okay, so the guiding principles that we've established with the long-term financial strategy really uplifts and aligns with the sustainability, equity, and resilience framework for the city as a whole. We have fiscal sustainability and sufficiency, equity, and resiliency. So under fiscal sustainability and sufficiency, we're focused on the stability and predictability of our core service levels and ensuring a diversity and flexibility of our revenues across the organization to be able to meet core service needs as well as community priorities. Under equity, we're focused on revenue structures, looking at revenue structures across the organization, as well as financial policies that help to aim and reduce tax burdens as well as fee burdens for historically disadvantaged groups. And resiliency is focused on anticipating, having the ability to anticipate, adapt, and recover quickly to adversity and change. And this is supported by both a diversification of our revenues, as well as ensuring we have sufficient reserve levels across all of our 41 budgeted funds. Next slide. So in terms, the next couple slides focus on our multi-year ballot measure framework that's moving forward as part of 2025 and 2026. We worked with the Financial Strategy Council Committee to develop this framework in consideration of potential tax ballot measures for 2025 and thinking forward to 2026. And these conversations are to come with the community as part of our Fund Our Future phase 2 of this work. Within 2025, we're focused more on a narrowed incremental approach to tax changes, and with key focus areas really looking at our backlog of unfunded and underfunded needs. And taking care of what we have across the city's portfolio. So that's looking at funding opportunities for core services. And in 2026, we're focused on an expanded, more comprehensive and creative approach to tax changes. Some of the key focus areas, again, are looking both at taking care of what we have, so our unmet needs, as well as additional investments in services and programs. Next slide. So when thinking about the measures that we have that fall within the 2025 framework, we worked with the Financial Strategy Committee in narrowing in potential options for 2025, looking at the multi-year ballot measure framework that we developed, looking at our guiding principles that we have as part of this project, and also performing staff analysis on looking at dedication of funding as well as a history of tax ballot measures across Colorado and comparable cities. And so in combining all of that work and effort in working with the Financial Strategy Committee, we narrowed in on 2 potential options that Council's considering for 2025. That includes an extension of the existing 0.3% CCRS, or Community Cultural Resilience and Safety, sales and use tax, from 2036 to 2050, or potentially considering it permanently to continue to support city infrastructure and maintenance projects, as well as nonprofit capacity building and capital investments. The second item for consideration within the 2025 tax ballot measures is the exploration of a creation of a public realm tax, which would increase the existing permanent parks property tax from 0.9 mils to 2.252 mils and expand the use of this tax. We'd also allow debt issuance with the use of this tax, and this would help to support infrastructure and capital maintenance projects that more broadly fell within the public realm. So what this means is that it could capture and help to fund items such as parks, open space, civic buildings and areas, and the public right-of-ways such as streets, sidewalks, bike lanes, and multi-use paths. There are a couple items just to highlight quickly in terms of revenue generation. For CCRS, we're currently estimating about 15 million in annual revenues, and there is that would be extended with a 90% going towards city projects and 10% going to support nonprofit organizations as it does currently. The public realm tax is currently estimated at 7 million annually, and again, the intent of this is really not to take away from the permanent parks property tax and current funding source, but look at expanding the use of that tax and being able to apply it to more expanded and heightened areas within the public realm. Can go to the next slide. So just 2 more slides. A couple is part of the work that we're doing with phase 2 of the long-term financial strategy, is working on Fund Our Future conversations that are to come this summer and fall. And the focus of this effort is really intending to receive input from a broad and diverse variety of stakeholders and understanding service level priorities across the city, educate the public on the city's budgets as well as the financial constraints that we're experiencing. There will be opportunities for council members that will help to support in some of these engagement sessions that we'll have that are in person as well as virtual, and we'll have several platform opportunities that include in person or online through platforms such as Be Heard Boulder. We're also planning to perform as part of the consideration for the 2026 tax ballot measures, a statistically valid polling survey that would come forward next year. And again, the intent of this effort is really to have a holistic engagement conversation with the community about service level priorities that could then help to inform 2026 potential taxes and consideration of potential taxes for 2026. So finally, on the timeline with Fund Our Future and phase 2 of this work within the long-term financial strategy, we're here in May, April and May, with previews to board and commissions, as well as community groups that are coming forward. We're going to have a community and council forum June 12th. It's planned for June 12th during a regular city council meeting time. We'll be launching information and input sessions, as well as community conversations July through October of this year. And bringing forward the polling survey, the statistically valid polling survey in 2026, as well as staff analysis that we're performing as part of looking at potential taxes and other revenues in January and March of next year. And then finally rounding out with a long-term financial strategy update and conversation on potential tax ballot measures in 2026 in early May with council in 2026. So with that, happy to answer any questions, but just providing a brief overview of the effort that we've been working on with the initiative of long-term financial strategy, and hope that you will participate as part of the conversations to come with Fund Our Future.
Yeah, thanks very much, Michelle.
Charlotte, I wanted to, sorry, that was a lot. The two tax measures that you're you're discussing, one that's going to basically bundle open space, parks, and just public spaces. Is that a brand new tax, or is that meant to replace anything?
Yeah, so thanks for the question. It is an expansion of property tax. It would actually be an increase to the mills, taking our mills from 0.9 and increasing that up to 2.252 mills, and taking that to the max that we actually have within city charter, which is 13 mills. And so it would be a new increment that is added and expanding the use of that entire tax to the public realm.
Okay, and then when you collect that, the city will be able to decide how they are able to well, not just when you collect it, but how you'll actually spend those monies. It's and divvy that up between the different departments.
That's correct. And I would say the one thing that we would be considering and bringing forward is really looking at programs and services across the board. So there are many programs and services that are supported by different departments across the organization. And so that is something that we would take a look at in terms of what are the top priorities that community members are interested in, what are city council priorities that are coming forward. And so the public realm tax would be able to, in lieu of this increment being focused solely on a particular function area, we would be able to expand and have the ability to support parks, open space, public right-of-way, items that fall more broadly within the public realm, and be able to provide that flexibility of funding to meet our guiding principles within the long-term financial strategy.
Thanks, that makes sense. So I've always thought that the city should have more discretion on what programs and services need more assistance at whatever point in time. I don't like these super hyper dedicated taxes. So it's more geared toward programs and services. So all those people who want a new rec center down in South Boulder, that's going to be a totally different path, right?
Yeah, that's a great question. So one of the items that we are currently looking at within the 2026 tax ballot measures is folding in the conversations that have been occurring related to the future of recreation centers. And so those conversations and the engagement that's currently occurring with those conversations related to South Boulder Recreation Center as well as North Boulder Recreation Center, that information is going to be folded into the work that we're doing with Fund Our Future and looking comprehensively across our unfunded needs list that we have across the city's portfolio. Our focus for the 2025 tax ballot measures is really focusing on taking care of what we have, our existing unfunded and underfunded needs. And so we have a list that will be further refined and updated as part of the 2026 budget development process. Currently, it's estimated at 380 million. That includes an array of programs and services and capital projects and infrastructure. And so that list will be further refined and updated in the coming months. I hope I answered your question.
That's good. Thank you so much.
I got a couple questions. Thank you for the presentation.
Mhm.
So when you said you're going to increase we're going to increase stability and diversity of funding. The
Mhm.
major idea on that right now is the public realm tax.
That's the current idea. So the principles that we've established within the long-term financial strategy is looking at revenue sufficiency, diversity, flexibility of funding as part of the two options that have come
Right.
forward.
But what other things would we do to get away from the sales and use tax? And like, is it just property taxes, or are there other ideas on the table?
There are other ideas on the table. Thanks for the question. We are looking at a blend of potential options. So the focus truly of the presentation was more so on the multi-year ballot measure strategy and looking at taxes as part of the work. And I didn't mention this or really focus on this as part of the presentation, but we are looking at potential other revenue sources. So as part of our alternative funding mechanisms work stream, we're focused on looking at our fees across the organization, looking at the cost recovery levels of our fees, for example, and a pathway for fee updates for those fees that have not been updated in a while across the organization or need further analysis for potential update. We're looking at what additional potential fees might make sense in coming forward. And so it really is a blend of looking at options. We're also looking at other taxes. So the work that's to come on staff analysis is looking at potential taxes like an occupation head tax or like a vacancy tax. There are other options that are on the table. And so it truly is a blend and not just looking at property tax for diversification.
What I hear is we don't have enough money. Not to be overly simplistic. And I'm curious, I'm not an expert in this, but in the conservation world, it's a little bit of a simplistic metric. But if you're looking at a landscape, you can kind of say, okay, how many dollars are we investing in stewardship per acre?
Mhm.
And so how do when we're a wealthy community with an above average tax base and we still feel like we don't have enough money. So when we are, that's my belief, maybe I'm wrong. When we're looking at other communities, do we ever say, okay, how much are we spending as a city per citizen? Is that the right metric? And then do you blend in some cost of living increase because this is different than rural Minnesota, where I grew up, for example? But how do we tell if I understand we may want more services than other communities,
Mhm.
but how do we tell how we stand in terms of spending?
Yeah.
And it seems to me, the last point, the reason the 2.252 mils hit that is because we hit some kind of threshold of a total
Correct.
13 mil levy on property taxes. So we're basically saying we're going to max it out. The maximum amount we're allowed by the charter, we're going to max it and we're going to spend it.
Correct. Currently, that is the maximum. We always have the opportunity to go to the voters and ask for an increase to that. That was one of the considerations on the table that we discussed with the Financial Strategy Committee, and that was pushed to consider as a potential option in 2026. In terms of the question that you had about service levels that we've got and looking at benchmarking analyses, it's a great question. It is part of the work that we're planning on doing as phase 2 of this work. So we are actually requesting as part of the 2026 budget development process across the whole organization, a list of services and service levels and looking at benchmarking analysis of services that the city provides to be able to help support in that analysis analysis and understand more holistically across the board, across all of our services that we have in the organization. And we have a fellow coming on board through a Harvard Bloomberg fellowship that will be helping in analyzing that work this summer. That work is going to be key to help serve in the community conversations to come as part of Fund Our Future. So it's a great question.
I enjoyed listening to you talk. Thank you. There was one, I had questions about the debt that you mentioned in the presentation. I don't know if there's anything else to say now about that.
Is this in relation to the federal uncertainty piece?
And then there was a slide where you were talking about potential solutions. It was one of the slides saying, it was sort of in a paragraph where it said, and debt to help us cover X, Y, and Z.
Right. So I think you're mentioning the public realm tax, where we were looking at allowing debt issuance within the public realm tax. So that is something that we're looking at primarily currently within our existing community culture resilience and safety tax. We have the authority to issue debt up to 110 million. We haven't yet done that because we always look at a blend of what are the annual revenues that are coming into a fund? Do we actually need to spend based on the capital project spending in the out years? And so this really would be able to provide us additional heightened flexibility to be able to leverage our financing opportunities. So that is what that is including there, is that ability to be able to perform that.
And how much support does that have, or how strongly are we moving in that towards that?
In terms of allowing debt issuance?
Yes, I see it's a ballot measure, so obviously the public will decide. I'm curious.
In terms of the timeline and how it moves forward?
Internally, like how much are we feeling that this is going to become an important, just a temperature read on that?
So it's a great question. So one of the things in terms of the timeline that comes forward in front of council is we will be bringing forward these to council at several touch points over the next several months. So our first check-in was last Thursday. We have our next on May 8th, where it's a discussion on ballot items that are to come. Council will be asking clarifying questions, and then we're actually performing a statistically valid survey for these items and taking a look. And so we'll be presenting that to City Council in late June. And so the results of that will really help to inform and provide additional clarity for council to be able to weigh the decision of whether or not we put both of these on the ballot for potential consideration for potential voter approval, one of these on the ballot or none of these on the ballot.
Hey, John, you're making way too much noise up there in Zoom land. Seriously, do you have any questions, comments, or should I jump in?
No, thank you for the presentation. Sorry, my camera kept cutting out. I've given up on trying to get it to work. Thank you for the presentation, and looking forward to working with you on this going forward.
Okay, so I just want to understand the public realm tax a little bit better. So you said that current level, 0.9 mils, it throws off about $7 million.
The current amount at 0.9 mils, and increasing that to 2.252, that increment allows us an additional estimated $7 million a year. An additional $7 million a year.
So it's probably giving us 5 or so right now at 0.9.
Between 4 and 5.
Okay.
Yep.
And it's basically money that can be allocated from the central city budget office to Parks and Rec, to open space, to right away and public works.
Right.
It's for any kind of public land, public use.
Exactly. Yep.
Public buildings, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So when it comes to predictability for the budget, for Dan's purposes, for OSMP, how is a department director supposed to know, how much of that additional money is going to come his way or her way in a given year? Is this money really meant for large projects, and departments still have to cover themselves for their operating budgets every year?
That's a great question, and it is inevitably part of the annual budget process in terms of considering priorities and projects and programs and services that come forward. It is part of the work that we do on an annual basis and taking into consideration a blend of items, looking at council priorities, looking at community priorities. We've performed significant and expanded community engagement efforts over the past several years in particular. We've worked with community members like community connectors and residents. We've understood the concerns, for example, about wildfire resilience that have come forward. And so it is a blend of understanding the priorities across the organization and balancing all of those. And that is what we do on an annual basis as part of the budget development process, and working with departments and understanding what are the operating needs, what are the capital needs, what are the unfunded needs that we have. Of those unfunded needs, what are the top priorities, and then thinking about potential phasing of those priorities. And so it is something that we take a look at on an annual basis, holistically across the organization.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody else have anything? Do you need to hear anything from us?
No.
Okay, then
No.
thank you very much for
Thank you
coming
so
and
much.
presenting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks, Charlotte.
Okay, before we go on, Dan, we're now slightly after 9. We missed the
Yes.
deadline for the
Yes.
last agenda item. So what that means is if we want to take up any agenda item according to our rules of procedure, we have to hold a vote. So
If I could provide you just our presentation is under 10 minutes long.
okay, great.
So,
Well, I'm gonna whip the vote, okay, Dan?
no,
We're
I'm
gonna
just
vote.
saying, the item can be as long as you want it. Our portion's very small.
Okay. Okay. So we have a pretty short item. And staff is here, and I'm going to recommend that we do vote to keep going in this meeting and take up this after 9 o'clock agenda item. So I'll start. We'll just do a roll call vote. John Carroll.
Yes.
Okay. Sarah.
Yes.
Okay. Brady.
Yes.
Michelle.
Yeah, so, and Lauren, I'll just remind you that last month, Casey like cruised through hers.
Yeah.
Ooh,
Yeah.
setting the bar. Wow. A vote and some advice.
All
Okay,
right.
well,
Well,
I'll vote
the-
yes.
the-
And so 5-0, we will hear this agenda
A
item.
very important topic, but as you know, the April one tends to be more context setting. So that's the good news, is this is the April touch on our budget, more context setting, starting to wet your whistle on things you're going to see and want to talk about in the future. Not that we can't talk about it tonight, but it's a good meeting for us to have to do an abbreviated one as compared to the June or July meeting, for instance. But with that, am I turning things over to Lauren? All right.
And I'll commend you on the decision to extend, since Sam is going to be leaving any day. So this is your last touch with Sam before you're stuck with me until August. So I just want to provide a couple comments before I hand it over to Cole and Sam. As Dan mentioned, this is a lighter month in terms of our overall budget scheduling cadence. We typically have a new board member coming on in April, and so our content in April is normally defining terms and talking about the city budget structure and really introducing. We're fortunate to have somebody joining us who's very well versed in that, and so we've tried to take the opportunity to really streamline our structure and what we want to get done in April. So the part of how we've streamlined it in the past, you've seen in the April packet just a ton of charts about master plan connection and a lot of different ways that we sort of slice all of the data. All of that is important. We still have it. We just didn't want to put all of that in your first packet. There's going to be time later in this budget season where we can bring things all together. So we say this every year, but the budget process is long. It takes about 10 months to create our annual budget when you factor in our internal staff work, our work with you all the partnership with finance, the planning board, the city council work. And so we spend, most of the year doing this. And at this point in the year, while we have generally completed our internal staff work, there's still a lot that we don't know. That is especially true this year. And I think you just heard about a lot of change and shifting guidance from finance. But we, for example, still do not have revenues. And we know that federally and statewide and locally, the landscape is changing. And we have not finalized targets yet when you think about, the impact of tariffs on our purchasing power, when you think about whether or not we'll be able to secure federal funding and how that sort of passes through the organization. So more than ever, I guess I just want to say that we've done, I think, great work, our best work to put something together that's fiscally constrained and responsible and really prioritizes the best, the most important things for next year. But there's a big caveat on that, right? We don't know what will change, and we expect that a lot's going to change. So we adjusted our budget structure this year for a few reasons. Typically, we would come back and present in May. We're actually going to have that as a written item instead of a presentation. So part of that is we still don't have revenues and targets, and finance will be partnering with CU and presenting all of that to council, and we need time to absorb that information and shift our budget. We also know that Sam is going to be out, and so there's some time internally that we need to be able to get our budget product ready and submitted. And yeah, that maybe is, yeah, and continuing to streamline. So I think a lot of what we heard in the board retreat is like, we feel really well versed. We've gotten our understanding of the budget process up over the years, and we can really rethink like the way and what information is presented in some of these packets. And so we were able to reduce the number of presentations in order to onboard that written item. So you're stuck with me now for the duration after tonight. This is going to be really high level and quick, and then just know that we're going to get a ton of information in May. We'll distill that best we can, and then June is really when we're going to come back together with that holistic picture that includes our positions and our operating and the 10-year look backs and all the things that we've talked about in the retreat and in January. So that's the plan, and I will stop talking now and hand it off to the team.
Good evening, trustees. Good to see you again. My name is Cole Moffitt, and together with Sam McQueen, who is online, we'll be presenting you the draft 26 work plan and budget. So a little quick overview on tonight. We're going through the overview of the budget process and capital expenditures, and a review of CIP trends and some project highlights. And as always, some time at the end for questions you may have. So tonight will be our second touch on the OSMP budget after our first touch in January. And like Lauren said, we will have a written update scheduled for next month, and the bulk of our discussion with actual figures coming in the June meeting. So a look at where we're at in the budget process. So April is a time when we're still expecting to receive some core information on our budget guidelines and targets from our revenue targets from our finance department, which we are expecting in the coming weeks. So budget guidelines typically include things like cost allocation, equipment and technology costs, and generally we expect increases to our base in 26 as the cost of business is steadily increasing over time. And we appreciate the feedback that we've heard from all of you in regarding your interest and help in the budget strategies earlier in our process, as well as seeing things like our 10-year spending trends, like Lauren mentioned, and trade-offs on those priorities. And just a reminder that we are preparing for a fiscally constrained environment, so the draft 26 CIP list in the memo and upcoming operating budget information will all account for this environment, as well as our forecasts may continue to change as we receive updated guidance in the coming weeks and months. So when we look at the open space budget, we have really four components: the operating, the CIP, revenues, and reserves. And tonight we are going to focus on a quick high level on the capital side. So some quick definitions for you. The classification of a CIP project it's typically discrete. It's over $50,000 that creates, maintains, or enhances a public infrastructure. And a CIP project typically does not include FTE additions or pay for standard salaries in that. So when we look, so CIP actually, it represented 17% of our overall budget in 2024. And we moved 1.2 million from CIP to operating in 24, and those are ongoing reflected changes in 26. And so if we look at this graph, you can see a lot of information here of a 10-year look back. So in 2017 and 2018, these numbers were high due to they were the final years of our FEMA flood spending from 2013, as well as the last 2 years of our 20-year land acquisition plan. And in 2019 and 2020 is when we had our calculated sales tax roll-offs. And so we planned for less money in those years. And you can kind of see the rebound with the sales tax increment, one of them coming back in, as well as the COVID recovery period as the revenues targets started to get better. And you can kind of see that we kind of go back up and we start to plateau. in 23, and then in 26, you can see we're starting to dip back down into this fiscally constrained environment with potentially slow revenue growth here. So kind of see the picture there, and we can certainly answer more questions as that comes along. So then looking beyond into the next 5 years, we are slowly reducing our CIP in the out years to 5 million over the horizon, which we feel is a good balance between having enough budget to get some of our larger scale projects done, while also not budgeting too much for the capacity that our staff can handle on a year-to-year basis. And one project we wanted to specifically call out was the grant-funded Mount Sanitas Trail Improvement Project. So of the 5.95 million in the memo of the 26 CIP, 5.6 will be directly from the Open Space Fund, and the remaining 350 will be reimbursed from a portion of dollars awarded for this grant. And now I'll kick it off to Sam, who will go into some more proposed CIP projects.
Yeah, thanks, Cole. And sorry for not being there in person tonight. So in January, we focused on high-level strategic budget guidance, and that conversation highlighted several city and department guidance documents. And as part of that conversation, we showed you what we call strategic priority areas, which are meant to communicate goals to OSMP staff for the upcoming year and set priorities for major projects or initiatives that require department-wide attention and investment. They show up in our CIP, operating budget, and staff work time at various levels. So the first strategic priority area we discussed is wildfire and climate resilience implementation. You'll see that reflected both in the CIP and operating budget, staffing, and programs. It's also included in the climate tax funded projects, which will be shared later in the budget planning process. Enhanced presence on the land is mostly reflected in the operating budget, staffing, and programs. And looking ahead, prioritized integrated work planning is mostly reflected in staff time. It really sets the basis for work planning process, which was used to develop the CIP list you're seeing tonight. It does also help us plan for emergent work while setting a 6-year vision for the department, like OSMP staff discussed at an earlier business meeting this year with Casey. Here are some examples of OSMP strategic priority areas on the 2026 CIP list. Wildfire and climate resilience implementation is reflected in the project titled Wildfire Resilient Landscapes, Fuels Mitigation, and portions of the OSMP climate implementation budget. An investment in enhanced presence on the land is included in portions of the Chautauqua Ranger Cottage and Trailhead redesign project. Again, these are just examples. We know that these strategic priority areas do show up in other projects as well. We also continue to incorporate master plan guidance in the CIP with an emphasis on tier 1 strategies. Again, Lauren had mentioned that we do have a lot of charts in the document in the memo that you saw this month, so you can take a look at those as well. And the next few slides will focus on CIP alignment with the master plan. As a reminder, our CIP projects highlight the 5 focus areas of the master plan, and they align with them with their corresponding strategies. They are ecosystem health and resilience, responsible recreation, stewardship, and enjoyment, agriculture today and tomorrow, community connection, education and inclusion, and financial sustainability. So many projects address multiple master plan strategies, and we incorporate that into our calculations to show alignment with CIP projects. Here's a snapshot of strategies identified in the master plan document. These are just the tier 1 strategies as showing here as an example. The full list is included in the published master plan. In 2026, OSMP continues to invest most in tier 1 strategies. It's consistent with the department's approach in the last 7 budget years since the master plan was approved. A reminder that all master plan strategies are considered important, but we call tier 1 strategies, they were identified for acceleration and emphasis with more staff time and funding. This table details some examples of projects with some level of alignment with master plan focus areas, just examples again, not a comprehensive list. The example projects listed on the right have some level of funding going toward the focus area where they're listed. And you can see here that projects that align with a particular focus area support a handful of topics just by reading the titles. To walk through the top row as an example while you're reading through, The ecosystem health and resilience focus area is reflected in the projects titled South Boulder Creek In-Stream Flow Initiative and Stockwater Planning for Drought Resilience and Support of Diversified Agriculture. A reminder that the full list of draft CIP projects is included in the memo. As we're wrapping up this April conversation, quick presentation, like we mentioned, we wanted to remind you what's coming up. In early May, Charlotte, Scott, and their team, who are just here tonight from the finance department, will be going to City Council to share a financial forecast and budget update. We're going to learn more in the lead up to that financial forecast, especially as Lauren mentioned, economic conditions are changing nationally and locally. We'll be sharing a written update with you for the May meeting it'll show our 2025 adjustment to base requests, any updates we have on economic conditions, and any other budget updates to the 2026 budget. And we do receive a lot of information that impacts budget planning in May each year. So we expect to update you on any major items in June. Okay, so closing out, does the OSBT have any clarifying questions? And in our next several budget touches, are there specific topics you would like us to emphasize?
Thanks, Sam. Thanks, Cole. Thanks, Lauren. Thanks to the folks in your office who helped you put all that together. And does anybody on the board want to address either or both of those questions? Ready?
Thanks for the update. Thanks for all the effort y'all put into not only just this process, but communicating it to us. Great to see that the 10-year kind of look back is on the list. So I appreciate that as well. And I mean, it's the topic du jour, but I'm sure the community would love to hear about what Flagstaff investments are happening. I think that's just another piece of data that we'll continue to hopefully communicate to the community that we're taking this seriously. And so I would encourage us to incorporate that into the future discussions if it feels appropriate.
So just a quick one. I saw the $350 and the $350,000 in the CIP as being picked up by the Sanitas grant, but as I recall, that's about a third of the total of that Sanitas grant. So is that a grant that gets spread over multiple years?
Yes, that's between 2025 and 2027. So you saw it in the budget for the first time this year. We're programming it in again in 2026 and then again in 2027.
Great. Any other questions, Sarah?
I'm curious, what percentage of our budget is coming from the federal? What is sort of in question right now? Do we have a rough sort of percentage, high level?
I don't have a percentage off the top of my head, but I can tell you we get some federal state pass-through grants, which tend to be smaller dollar and more infrequent. We have about $150,000 wetlands grant currently that we have not heard that there's any change to. The Land and Water Conservation Fund for Sanitas is federally allocated, and we're not anticipating at this point any change. There were some probably larger grants anticipated in out years from federal agencies, and we're still in a little bit of a wait and see, which would be several $1 million in impact.
Okay, so to answer just to address the second question about what I'd like to see, maybe a little bit of additional breaking out of the sustainability, equity, and resilience, and how we're focusing on that monetarily, budgetarily. Anybody else? Sam, did you want to say something?
No, thank you. I'm just nodding to take notes.
Okay. All right. Well, then I guess hearing no additional comments, I'm going to say thanks for that. Thanks again for bringing that to our attention. And so as not to cut off the final budget item, but not to belabor it, can we just get a show of hands to vote to take up item E for Dan's director's report? Yes? Okay. You win.
Yes.
No report at this meeting.
No report. Okay. Well then, gavelless, but nonetheless joyously, I will adjourn this meeting. Thank you.